OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Colin, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
Oh, and Sheahan, welcome back.
Hello.
Thanks very much. How are you?
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Welcome back to yourself as well. Haven't seen you since last Friday.
Tilt your laptop forward there a small bit if you don't mind, and give everybody... No, the other way. Give everybody a look at that sweet, sweet jersey.
Yeah.
What have you got on you?
Shout out to Barcelona Gales who dropped over a GA jersey to my Airbnb the other day. Shout out to Owen, the chairman, who came over and said, if you wear this in studio on OTB AM, I'll give you a free jersey. And this it is. So any other free gifts, I think, is probably what we're trying to say this morning, would be greatly appreciated. And we will do anything for free kit. Is it a good jersey?
To get your laptop out of the way there. We can't see it at all properly. There we go. It's like, it's got little bits of the Barcelona FC jersey going on, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Colin is our resident jersey expert, so expect everybody in Barcelona Gales to rip your jersey apart here, figuratively.
Am I? I thought Joseph Conroy was the kind
he's not here, is he?
He's not here.
Yeah,
he's not here right now, so I'll
studio.
take over. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's beautiful. It is good.
Very
and
nice.
it's actually kind of what I expected when you told me yesterday that you're going to wear it without ever seeing it.
Predictable.
Why did I think that?
But good.
Because you were in Barcelona.
What?
Was that where the festival was?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you didn't realise that. Yeah, that's
I think there are a lot of people, some people, obviously, the super fans will have known exactly sort of blow by blow what you've been doing with your last few days. Primavera.
Only the super fans.
Primavera.
Yeah. They'll probably be wondering why I plugged myself out before weekend too, but such is the life of a professional, that I decided to be back in this morning for Friday's OTB AM.
I texted a friend and I was like, you were at Primavera? And she said, yeah. And I was like, how is it? And she was like, day one equals Firefest.
Yeah.
Day two improved.
That was the thing. People love to complain.
What was the story?
Day one being compared to Firefest was one of the funniest things of all time, really. You know, Firefest
Where did that come from, though?
A long queue for the bar. People just don't like queuing.
Was that it? Was that it?
Did they see
That's
Firefest?
not Firefest. That's
to be fair, there was like water taps. I think, does Glastonbury have something like 850 water taps as a statistic? And Primavera had 3 on the first day, and most of them just weren't working after a couple of hours. So I think that was, a
they
real
needed somebody
threat.
to go down and talk to the port captain. Was that it?
They did. Yeah.
So that's the reference.
So they put it. So they fixed that after a time, but. People love to complain. I saw somebody on Reddit being like, this festival would have been great if it wasn't for all the British and Irish people here. So we've been lumped in there and being blamed for people's problems, which, you know what, isn't a bad thing.
We've asked you to stick together your top, 5?
You didn't ask me to do anything. Colin texted me yesterday being like, who was going to the festival, like I thought any good mate would ask. So I did that, and apparently this was actually for an item.
No, I just wanted to know what you had done with your life, because I had seen... The Instagram story was just act after act, and I wanted to know, well, who stood out for you?
Yeah.
And then myself
question.
and Adrian happened to be talking, and then we were like, well, let's listen to this music. So last night,
this is going to be very how do you do, fellow kids radio, isn't it?
I went through said music. I listened to a few jingles, and I thought they were very impressive.
I did flag up that there was no way I was going to even know. I would never have heard any of the acts that you were going to suggest, which, as it turns out,
you're into more intense music than I anticipated. It was real. Hacienda stuff.
Do you want to give us your top 5 in reverse order?
Yeah, you're painting this as if this is like some sort of hipster off-piste festival, when it's like one of the biggest music festivals in the world where the biggest artists are there. This is not like some sort of...
I was going to include both of us, but I'll definitely speak for myself. 100% all of those things for somebody like me. This is new music.
Finally.
I was at Noel Gallagher when you were listening to insert cool band name.
Finally, somebody who speaks my language on the show, Adrian Barry, my kindred spirit.
Come on, give us the top 5.
Go on.
Owen Sheahan's new music.
I'm not giving you a top 5 because I can't really...
No, you did list out a few.
Come on, there's people out there now who are like, you've been to Primavera, you've gone to do the research, give them a playlist for the weekend.
I'm not going to give you a playlist for the weekend, but I will say the best gig I saw all weekend was Little Sims, one of the best British rappers in the world right now. She's on course to be the best British rapper in the world. Her last album, absolutely sensational. Played the Academy only last year, and then played, maybe the second biggest stage over there to thousands of people last week. So that was that for me was the highlight.
Well, you listed out a few more as well.
Avalanches meets Bob Marley meets. So I was trying to think about it.
Is that your review?
Meets something else.
I can read it online.
I'm not quite sure.
So you mentioned Gorillaz. I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood.
This little known band.
Then you mentioned Caribou.
Caribou were great.
Tempted to say Carabao. as in the cup.
Well, what
Always
happened?
bring it back to sport.
The Strokes pulled out, which was a big disappointment, but that
did they?
allowed us all to go
Really?
see Caribou, who was
Caribou
fantastic.
have a bit of a vibe of the 5 o'clock and you're creaming the last out of the night vibe about them.
Absolutely
5
not.
a.m.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then also mentioned Fred again. So
Yeah.
then Adrian
Again,
was
very
getting onto me
mainstream.
being like,
Wow,
there's some bangers here. And then Adrian said, Fred Arish, very good. So then I typed into Spotify Fred Arish. I was like, well, there's no fan.
What's that?
There's nobody called Fred Arish. I had to go back into my notes from you. Fred again, also very good.
Very good.
There was
like,
two of us listening to
exceptional
it last
now.
night, and
Exceptional.
So
Like,
Fred again
really
is your guy.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
So
that-
what we're gonna do here is we're gonna bring Adrian Barry to a Fred again concert next time he's playing.
that would be
I do believe
amazing.
he's playing all together now in the August Bank Holiday weekend. So got to bring Adrian Barry along for that.
This is not like you're wheeling your granddad out of the. I mean, I appreciate
basically
that.
is
I'm a
that.
slightly
but you know what?
older
Like
generation.
Smaz, who claims to know about music, I was playing her a few songs.
For anybody that doesn't
That's
know,
your
it's
wife, is it?
Yeah, and well, it's just for us. And she was like, I don't know them, but annoyingly, like I don't really know them. But
Right.
liked a few of the songs and was like, oh, I like Owen's taste.
Okay.
Helado Negro was the other one.
He was excellent,
She loved
yeah.
Helado, and
He
then
was
she
great.
was like, she said, shoehorned a reference to what he reminds me of. Another artist that she likes, and she was like, say it naturally, so it's like your own words, but I can't remember the artist.
I thought
Well, it
if
sounded great anyway.
Helado-
it was really
Helado-
good. Like, I honest to God, it was
if,
brilliant.
if John Major had it been John Lennon, that's what the Beatles would have sounded like.
Clip that. Clip
Well,
that.
I
Clip
mean
that.
that's a sentence I didn't think
Clip
I'd hear.
No,
Yeah.
they're a bit.
No,
bit like,
I'm not sure what that even means to
get a
be
bit of-
to be
get a
quite,
bit
to
of
be
life
quite
Do
honest
you
with you.
have a tattoo?
I do not have a tattoo. You know.
Dave Kaz wants to know, did you get a drunken tattoo? I wouldn't have.
No, I wouldn't
That
get
would
it.
be an impulse for you.
No, I wouldn't. I would if I could. If I saw myself as somebody who could pull off a tattoo, I would definitely have a tattoo. But I don't see myself as somebody who can do that. So, no, Dave Cos, sorry about that. But any suggestions, I will get one.
Cool.
Have you been following the trials and tribulations of the Republic of Ireland?
Unlike Stephen Doyle was over there as well. He went to an Irish bar to watch the first of the two games. I declined to
Armenia,
do
I know
such a
this.
thing. No, I know. I have spent most of the last 24 hours catching up on what feels like, you know, Groundhog Day once again. And even like reading the papers this morning, it's like, wow, we've just been beaten by Luxembourg again, where all the good things that hadn't yet happened come the Luxembourg game had almost been erased, and we were kind of back to that place where nothing good had happened to this team at any point over the last little while. And it feels that the Meath music is desperate all of a sudden. Like the headlines this morning that he's on his last leg, Stephen Kenny that is, in terms of his role, that things are going to be assessed over the next little while. The results are really, really bad, but it feels that we all have this itch to fix Irish football very quickly. Fix the senior international men's team very, very quickly. And that impulse for the results to be better in the here and now is definitely front and centre, isn't it?
Did you catch any of the Ukraine game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of them back. I didn't
That you've
watch
seen
it.
the highlights, which would have been about 30 seconds from both games.
Yeah.
Fairly
No,
brutal.
It's a totally different experiences because you were at the match, Adrian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to the Ukraine match the other night. Brought my son, 5-year-old, first football match.
Yeah.
First time at the Aviva. Everybody was buzzing. Very late. Like, he normally, kick-off time would normally be his bedtime. So it was all a bit of an experience. But great seats, 3 rows back.
Oh.
Really great view. Like, good chance to see everything up close and personal. And it was just a bit brutal. Like, sorry, there was, you were expecting post Armenia there to be a bit of a reaction. It was the first thing we had to see, and it was great. 15, 20 minutes that was there. Somewhat creative, creating a couple of chances, dominating the play, and you thought, geez, this is actually going well. The Armenia thing was a bit of a blip, and then after that it just falls off the cliff a little bit. And look, where does the whole thing go from here? Obviously, we'll play Scotland tomorrow. And you're right, like, there's obviously a lot of coverage in the papers this morning about like how many more games does he have. There's quotes from Jonathan Hill from around the time of the contract negotiations to say like that there is a clause in there that he can get out, or they can get him out if needs be, without having to have a huge sort of payday. Like, they go and beat Scotland, the mood music will change again. That's the sort of place we're in with Stephen Kenny and this team at the minute, and nobody's sure, how much of the blame rests on his shoulders versus how much rests with the players. The only thing I'd say about that is that we really, no matter who's managing the team and no matter who the players are, we really should have enough about us to beat Armenia and to be, at the very minimum, competitive against Ukraine second. So it's very hard to explain what the hell is going wrong?
Well, we talked about it first thing yesterday morning, and I would say like 99% of the comments coming in were essentially Kenny out in various forms. What was the mood like at the stadium leaving the match?
Well, you'll be interested to know, left with 15 minutes to go, so I don't know exactly at full time. I was there with a 5-year-old who was already 2 hours past his bedtime, so give me a break.
Didn't we talk about this a few weeks ago about leaving matches early?
We did, but to be fair, we had creamed. He wanted to go, understandably, at half time. So, I think he was.
So he's properly Kenny out.
He was as unimpressed with everything as anybody. But no, we left 50 minutes to go. I felt like beforehand, like match-going fans are far different than 99% of people that were in contact with the show yesterday, in that everybody's optimistic just before kickoff. Like you can have that short-term memory bit and forget about the fact what went with Armenia and go, okay, fresh slate, we're going to get in, we're going to get stuck in. So I think that there can be a difference to it. The atmosphere was a bit weird. There was like stand up for the boys in green about 15-20 minutes in, and then after that, and there was a bit of we're with you Ukraine in advance as well, which I think lent itself to the atmosphere quite well. But yeah, just like once after 20 minutes, everything just started to fall apart a bit. Obviously, even at half time, you sort of regroup and you come out again, and 2 minutes later, you're a goal down after and I've looked at that goal 20 times and I still don't know how it went in. I still don't know who's at fault. I know Damien Delaney on Virgin Media last night was firmly pointing the finger at Jeff Hendrick.
Really?
For vacating that sort of first position, but like he was saying that he left a hole behind him. It looked to me as if Jeff Hendrick would want to be about 10 foot tall to have managed to either way have made contact with that ball. So it is, should the keeper be coming out to command that space? I don't know. It was all a bit weird, and the game was a bit weird, and we'll know a lot more after Scotland. It does feel that, if Armenia are a level ahead of us and Ukraine seconds team are a level ahead of us, Scotland must be a couple of levels ahead of us. So I don't know. If we go and beat Scotland, and it does look at the minute as if that's a fairly big if, that'll totally change the narrative again.
Yeah. The only thing you can say for certain about it then is that, regardless of what happens here, that there's still there are two wildly differing possibilities depending on each and every result. That even though we thought we had some degree of closure, at least closure with regards to a certain chapter in this era of Irish football, I think the last couple of games have shown us that there was no closure whatsoever. This conversation is absolutely still alive. The whole idea of, the FAI putting any contract talk to bed or any sort of job security being present, I think that what we realise now is that sort of stuff is not the reality when it comes to the public discourse around this team. What I find really interesting is that when you talk about, did you say 99% of people are Kenny out in the comments yesterday? That it's that level. And I'm not saying the 99% of people are wrong or anything. I'm not quite sure what is the right answer at the moment, but I'm just surprised that is the magnitude of the support for a managerial change at this point. Given I felt a couple of years ago that everybody was kind of on board with we need a certain type of change. We can't keep covering things up with a plaster. We can't keep looking towards the outside in approach where we get a manager who has proven himself in the English leagues or has a certain amount of profile, who can come in and cobble together a decent enough team who will get decent enough results, and maybe Ireland will qualify for Euros every so often. It felt that the current sort of change was this sort of inside out, as arsey as that sounds, sort of change where there would be root and branch analysis of Irish football, and Irish football would blossom from the inside out. But it turns out actually maybe we were too hopeful for that, and the manager for the Republic of Ireland, what position does that have in that sort of overhaul of Irish football? Maybe you're putting the cart before the horse when it comes to a manager like this is a possibility. Well, the morning after reaction yesterday was stronger than Wednesday night, I found. And people seem to just given up on the whole thing. But what is remarkable is that has there ever been a more positive feeling of this Stephen Kenny era than lunchtime last Saturday before the Armenia match started? And it's on tenterhooks, this whole thing, because the results have been good up to that point. And the other record is, 2 wins in 17 competitive games under Stephen Kenny. But those matches that Ireland have lost under his reign, they've all been by a goal. These are tight matches. These are fine lines. If Shane Duffy scores that header with 5 minutes to go against Ukraine, it's 1-1. And we're thinking, well, a poor performance. But, a lot of people say it's a results business. That people throw that against them all the time. So if you get a point, it's like 1 point in 2 games, not great, not terrible. That's how fine a margin it is. Big if, though, isn't it? It's if we'd have scored a goal, this would have been different. Totally. And we just don't. Outside of the odd Shane Duffy, like some of our set piece play against Armenia it was hard to figure out how
it could possibly be so bad.
Yeah.
It was desperate.
Yeah.
And not all like, oh, Anthony Barry is gone and, you know, the nuance of our set piece is not right. It wasn't the nuance. It was like the delivery of corners, free kicks, whatever it was absolutely brutal. I just think it's a big if. And like you were saying on, you know, I don't know, are the 99% wrong? I think that right now, you know, people are saying Kenny out. Are they saying get rid of him now, right now? Like, I mean, that's wrong for sure. Let's wait and see what happens with
I think
Scotland.
we're talking like a matter of games here. We're talking about.
I think that's fair.
The end of this
We're
mini
talking about
period.
before September is when a
Exactly.
new
But you
manager
can't
will be.
preempt.
They have 2 more matches to go. So a lot of people are saying this time next week, Ireland will have the vacant role of manager.
It's been reported in the Star and the Mail this morning that at the end of this month there could be serious conversations had if the results don't pick up soon, which is the next 2 fixtures.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that in Philip Gwynn's piece in the Mail, he lists out the possible replacements. So Chris Hughton, it seems to me, kind of like stands head and shoulders above the other candidates at the moment. He is, I think you made the point in the show yesterday, Colm, the guy who is always mentioned when it comes to the conversations around the Ireland job.
There was Will.
It was Will. Sorry, apologies, Will.
Yeah.
Second up, Lee Carsley. Lee Carsley's not going to. Is he going to take the Republic of Ireland senior job? Maybe the senior job.
Are you saying the Ireland senior job is below him?
Like, I mean, there's a possibility that any job within the FAI is below Lee Carsley, who's working for the FA.
The under-21 manager.
Then there's like Michael O'Neill, Neil Lennon, Jim Goodwin also come into consideration, and the FAI will be wary of appointing Roy Keane. He says, so is Roy Keane, do I take that sentence as Roy Keane is also at the list and they're just wary of that option, or why is that in there? These are the options.
Bielsa would love this project, wouldn't he? Would love it. And I think he's
how would we cope with Marcelo?
I think he'd love that. Robert Lynch in the YouTube comments. Thank God Owen is back. At least there's a bit of class on today's show. We've missed him.
Well, that's Robert. I appreciate your irony.
What the hell is wrong with Robert?
No, that's absolutely right.
A bit of class. You're included in that.
I'm agreeing with him.
I mean, the wine and cheese.
What do you expect me to defend myself here?
I thought you were always on about how classy you were.
The cheese board guy is the scumbag of Team OTB.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever find me saying that, Colin, but thank you for the reference. We are going to talk a lot more football, so if you've thoughts about it, do lash them into us over the course of the morning. We bring them to our audience. Like Colum's plucked out of his armpit 99% of people wanted Stephen Kenny out. I would be interested to know how people are feeling about that.
That was the comment section on yesterday morning's live YouTube stream.
So if you have slightly different opinion, fire us in your comments, we'll get to them. The other thing is the live golf stuff has kicked off. You'd nearly be half reluctant to talk about it, and hopefully at some point or another we will stop talking about it, but I think for now, given that it's the initial and inaugural tournament on this, whatever the hell it is, tour, series, whatever you want to call it, is up and running. Interesting development yesterday. Another press conference from Graham McDowell, of course, being one of these things. I think we have a clip of that for people who haven't seen it. Have we got a clip?
No clip of that, but we do have the Alan Shipney.
Just on the McDowell stuff. So he's come out again and he's been saying, that he's very disgruntled with the PGA Tour, who've now banned the players who were members of their tour from playing at the PGA Tour on foot. They see Ian Poulter is one of those who's saying today that it's all very unfair, and he's not accepting this and he's going to go and challenge it. McDowell had resigned from the PGA Tour as a preemptive move half an hour before he teed off, before the statement came through. So we'll see how all that plays out. And I don't know, McDowell also had some other sort of mind-boggling stuff to say in his press conference yesterday. It's worth checking out. It's about 3 minutes long. I sort of was of the view up to this point that these players have lived in a bubble for so many years that they are unaware of all these other factors. And then obviously the press conference this week started to pierce that bubble a little bit. But then I started to think, like, if I was in their boots, you've got family. They're not just... It's not just that I live in my bubble and I don't ever come into contact with the real world. They have real people around them, even though they're slightly detached from that, in family, I presume. Is nobody tapping them on the shoulder going, Graham, would you shut up? This sounds terrible. Please have some sort of a self-awareness. He was talking yesterday about them executing the plan around, like the language that he's using is just so lacking in any self-awareness that it's... borderline disgusting. There was also the Alan Shipnick stuff. He's a very prominent golf journalist who wrote all the stuff about Phil. You might remember a few months ago.
With Phil.
With Phil, even though Phil maybe, and the evidence yesterday suggests that he definitely was thinking that he didn't know about it. But he Phil was having a press conference yesterday. Alan Shipnock went to cover it. He was stood at the back of the room listening to the quotes and a couple of heavies, as you can see in the screen here now. Walked him out of the. Now, just keep an eye over the what will be the left shoulder of the heavy on the left hand side there, or his right shoulder. You can see a little baseball cap in the background there, and you'll see in a minute that is none other than Greg Norman, who's the man responsible for pulling all this stuff together on the Live Golf Invitational. There he is. That's his little gilet there poking out, and that's Alan Shipnock in the beard, and he's talking to James Corrigan, another golf writer, and Alan Shipnock has been told that he's not welcome at the press conference, Phil Mickelson's press conference. So, and that's for the reasons as mentioned, that they had all those sort of off the record conversations that ended up being on the record. And then he texts Greg Norman, who stood there behind, now with his back to him, but had been watching all this for the previous 30 seconds. Texts Greg Norman to say, "Hey Greg, was removed by a couple of your heavies. What's the story?" And Greg replies, "Did not hear. Thanks for letting me know."
You know
look at that screen grab.
You know that Undertaker meme where Undertaker's just standing in the background, peering at his adversity.
He really has walked himself into the doo-doo now, because if he'd removed the "did not hear" bit, everything else would have been absolutely fine. But
that would have been one of the coldest texts in history if he had removed the first sentence.
Well, I don't think there was a huge amount of warmth about it anyway, or any sort of commitment to "thanks for letting me know, I'll have a look into that." It was like, F off. I couldn't.
No, the first part is a bit, I didn't know that. Oh, thanks for letting me know. But if you leave out the first part, that's cold, especially with the stance in the background.
It's obviously, it would, if it wasn't such a grim situation, it would obviously be a lot funnier. But there were other far more important things going on here. But just on the GMAC thing, and I'm not referring to him by his real name. He is GMAC from now on, like the worst nickname of all time for a guy who, I guess I've seen so many people commenting on his accent yesterday and slating him for his accent, which I thought was a ship that had sailed years and years and years ago, that it kind of feels that new people are being magnetised towards Graham McDowell over the course of this week because of Live Golf. And in a weird way, who stands out to you over the last couple of days in terms of, I guess, putting their foot in it a little bit with regards to the words that they've spoken? I'd say McDowell is right up there in terms of the people who have essentially become spokespeople for Live Golf, or Live Laugh Love Golf, as I like to call them, and just by extension be the face of this sort of new regime in golf, which is the whole point of sports washing, essentially duping people into being representatives for the regime that you want to sports wash. Graham McDowell is sports washer in chief for Saudi Arabia, it turns out, which is not a sentence I don't think any of us would have imagined saying 12 months ago, even a week ago. I to be reminded that McDowell was even in this thing. I'd completely forgotten that he'd been signed up to this whole thing, and DJ managed to grab the headlines of being the most high-profile golfer. But as things have transpired over the last couple of days, it's been GMAC soundbites that have stood head and shoulders above the rest. He is the face of the operation now.
Well, this is a guy who's become a total irrelevance to competitive golf. You have to remind yourself of that.
The Sky Sports Super yesterday was absolutely fantastic.
Well, he's clinging on, as the Sky Sports Super would indicate, to the top 400 in the world. He's over the last time he won a tournament of any significance was the guts of 10 years ago. He's won a couple of I'm reluctant to say Mickey Mouse, but let's go with the tournaments during that time, alternative events when the big guns were off playing actual events. He had won one in 2019, maybe had one in 2015 when the best players were elsewhere. He's been sat in the veranda of his golf career for the last 7 or 8 years, and he's sitting there whiling away the time, sucking on a couple of cold beers. And nobody's passing by.
Like a good life.
Nobody's passing by too much to say hello. And suddenly the gold bullion turns up, bags of cash on his veranda when he's wearing his cowboy boots to extend the analogy. And who's sat up in the horses? But his old buddies Greg Norman and Phil Mickelson. And it turns out they're like, you're our guy. We want you. We love you. And he's like, the big guys really like me. They love me. Let's go and do this thing. He looks like a.
Wait till Saudi Arabia find out that Graham McDowell likes a cold beer. He will be turfed out of this thing ASAP.
Yeah. Show ponies in polo shirts and slacks was a great line that I read from Ewan Murray in The Guardian yesterday, which kind of summed the whole thing up. And you Phil talking about his shortcomings he's had and the therapy that he's been going through. I've become a better person, and he's out swinging it around as you say, leading the way for sports washing.
Yeah, well, he refused to talk about it really yesterday. Phil, when he was asked about it afterwards, he kept him kind of pleading the fifth. So, yeah, he's going to keep him doing that. But it's a good place as any to leave it, because this story is very frustrating.
It's not going anywhere anytime soon either. Right, it's 5 to 8. Here's what's coming up on the show between now and 10 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Karen Duggan is patiently standing by. We're going to talk to her about the Republic of Ireland in just a couple of moments' time. The now former Meath manager Andy McEntee will be live in studio with us in about 15-20 minutes' time. Sports news after that, 25 to 9. We have Alan Quinlan and Ronan O'Gara, dynamic duo, coming your way at 10 to 9 this morning. So again, any questions for both of those, do please get in touch. Damien Browne and Fergus Farrell will be with us at 10 past 9. These were the two rowers that are leaving New York City, possibly as early as today, to row to Galway and try and beat that record of 55 days and 13 hours. We spoke to both of them. We spoke to Damian about 3 months ago, and Fergus was, you might remember, thrown out of the hostel, I think, that he was in, or the hostelry that he was in at that time. For whatever reason, so we must get to the bottom of that story as well. And then we'll have Claire Sheahan, who was in conversation, great conversation with Nathan on last night's show. So that is the lineup for you this morning. And as I said, please do get your comments coming into us wherever it is that you are watching us this morning. Let's turn our attention now to back to the football, to the Republic of Ireland, and say good morning again to the host of the Call Gig Pod, Karen Duggan. Good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
Good, and thanks for patiently waiting for us there. We were chatting this day last week about the optimism in the air. I asked you for a prediction of what would be a good haul of points over the course of the few games. 2 wins and a draw was how you were looking at it. How far back have the results and the performances of the last 2 games set us?
Yeah, that was when I was young and optimistic.
A week ago.
I've aged significantly watching the 2 games since then, unfortunately. Yeah, little cause for optimism. I suppose, again, we'll look at it being the end of a long season for a lot of people, but the Nations League was put in place to make these games more competitive and give the players a bit more pep in their step when they come out to play these games. And the Armenia game just lacked so much energy. And it kind of just highlighted the lack of creativity we do have. We can have a lot of possession and we can play a little bit more, but when it gets to the final third, we're still very static. And while we started with a bit more energy against Ukraine and we pressed okay, again, I felt like there was no real movement that threatened the back three of Ukraine. And then when they got to grips with that, a very inexperienced backline, I think there was about 5 caps between them. Once they got to grips with that and they started putting their foot on the ball, we were really exposed in midfield again. And I think that was because of the formation we set out in. We've conceded those long distance goals against Armenia. I think we would have learned a lesson to pack another man into midfield to kind of shore up that bit in front of our defence. And Stephen Kenny didn't do that. And that's where I would have my questioning over him, because it was obvious after the Armenia game that was a replicate of goals we've seen against the likes of Luxembourg before. And then at halftime, I felt like it was really obvious that we needed a change of formation if he wasn't going to change any players. So that was a big cause of disappointment for me on the management side.
So is it immediately a formation change for Scotland tomorrow if you were in charge, Karen, and I guess ditch the 3 at the back and put one of those men in midfield?
No, if you want to stay 3 at the back, that's fine, but I would go 3-5-2 as opposed to the 3-4-3. I think Jason Knight started well when he got a couple of balls, when he drifted inside, but we caused nothing in terms of width. I thought that our wing backs were too close to our centre backs, so it looked like we were playing 5, and it made it very easy for the Ukraine strikers to kind of occupy our wing backs and our centre backs. They were just drifting in off the wings, and our centre backs were far too slow to react to pick them up. And they caused us a lot of trouble. And Ukraine's second string squad, you can say, okay, they're still they're 27th in the world. They're still going to be looking at players who are playing Champions League. It's their second string squad in a game that would have meant very little to them, really. And we just looked like we were at 6s and 7s at the back. And that's coming from the likes of Duffy and Egan, who are our most experienced players. So you'd have to wonder how comfortable they are in the current formation. Do we need to go back to basics a little bit more and start getting the ball out wide, whipped crosses into the box? And I think that might work better with a different formation. And even looking at the likes of bringing in the experience of McLean, who'll just run up and down the line all day and just offer a bit more width there.
Yeah, a bit of energy. Like, you'd have to assume that they're having those conversations internally, Karen, right? Like, they're not unaware of the fact that those points that you're making, particularly about obviously they've been overrun in midfield. So at some point or another, like within the game, he decides, well, we can't change the formation now, but at some point or another, it's going to come to it, isn't it? Like, we We have changed formation from the earlier setup to what was it post-Bulgaria, where we moved into this new setup at 3 at the back. Like, there's almost an ego conversation, is there, at some point or another, where he's like, I got to stick with this is my plan, or I'm going to lose my job here if I don't tweak this up?
Yeah, I think they have to be more adaptable than they have been. I think it's worked when we have essentially been playing 5 at the back and we've gotten our good results against your better teams, your Belgians and your Portugals, and that's all well and good. But when we have a lot of possession against the likes of Armenia and we don't look as threatening as they do, I think that there's big question marks there. Now, I don't think we have the players to play the formation. It's not a bad formation. I'm sure it would work in a lot of cases, but you have to have really, really dynamic attackers. And I don't think that we're exactly blessed with that. So maybe if you drop a man into midfield and you get runners up front who'll spin into those channels, because the way it looked to me, it looked like Knight was very rigid on the left, that Robinson was very rigid in the centre, and Benny was very rigid on the right. And there was no real interchange between them. So then when our fullbacks got the ball, they were just looking at static players who were being marked. And it's up to them to move better. So maybe it is a coaching piece just to get them more comfortable in those attacking positions. But I think that we should play to our strengths and get some two quick players up front who will run into the challenge or into the channels, and then bring the likes of Knight and Hendrick, who are sitting behind, into the play a bit more. I just think that at the moment, Cullen is being exposed, given that Hendrick is trying to join into the attack and make things happen, and it's breaking down very quickly. And then our centre backs, they seem to just be dropping off. Maybe they're afraid of their pace. Collins brought a bit of pace to that back 3, but they drop off too quickly, and then the gap between our attack and defence, it just seems huge. And I don't know, I think to me it seems obvious. Maybe Stephen Kenny sees it differently because they have had possession and have had some bright sparks with that formation, but I'd be definitely looking for a formation change against Scotland, because I think Scotland, while they'll be again tired and disappointed with how their World Cup qualifying campaign ended, I think they have a lot of quality in their ranks, and they have a lot of players who are playing at a much higher level than us. So we need to get back to basics and try and keep a clean sheet. And that's, you don't do that by leaving huge spaces for quality number 10s.
One of the things that's going to be mentioned a lot, and has been mentioned a lot, is Stephen Kenny's words a few months ago at this stage when he spoke about the Nations League. And I guess after a couple of good results in the last campaign, he said we can go out and try and win our division in League B in the Nations League. As a player, Karen, is that something you would have wanted to hear at that point, or do you think it would have heaped undue pressure on you as a player?
No, I think that given the kind of shift in momentum, and you look at a group, you think, okay, we can definitely frustrate the likes of Ukraine and Scotland and possibly nick a home win. But as soon as you lose to Armenia, they probably didn't focus on Armenia because they thought that was a given. As soon as that happens, it's almost like we've reverted back 12 months back to that COVID period where we couldn't buy a win. And it took so long to build momentum for them to allow that to happen. I think the players have to take a lot of responsibility for that. There's no way that any team that we put out against Armenia should have lost. They should have brought more energy. They should have been able to deal with any threats that Armenia threw our way. Just because they played 5 at the back should have meant that we would have had more space in midfield. Maybe we could have thrown on more creative players, maybe the likes of Howrahan to pick a pass or something like that. But you as a player should back yourself against Armenia. So I have no problem with Stephen Kenny saying that at the time, given the momentum that we did have. I think we know it's unrealistic now, and I don't think he would go near saying a comment like that now, given the position that we're in. But the players do need to take a good look inward as well as everything. The players are coming under criticism. I've heard people say this is the worst bunch of players we've had in a long time. That's possibly true, but there are still some very good players in there, and there's some experienced players who should be able to rally the troops now. But the body language coming off the pitch against Ukraine didn't exactly inspire me. The likes of Duffy looked very, very down about it. So I think he just needs to get players on the pitch now against Scotland who can bring as much energy as possible, be that the likes of McLean, and he has to change things up a little bit rather than blooding in these new players. Maybe it is just a back to basics job against Scotland.
Is that the only way to tackle that confidence bit, Karen, like to sort of refresh things a little bit? Because I presume they'll go back into camp and they'll, the next morning they're trying to almost forget as much as they can about what went and try to change the narrative and try to build up the confidence bit before the game. Is it just freshening up the personnel? Is that the best way to do all of that?
Yeah, I think freshen up the personnel, and even if you have to sacrifice a few of your beliefs in terms of how you play, the fans can't look at another loss after the last 2 games. So it's doing everything within your power not to lose this game against Scotland. That would be my opinion anyway. I wouldn't have cared if the game wasn't a good game against Armenia, as long as we won, just to set the confidence levels up and set ourselves up, and again keep that momentum going. But I feel like we're really gone back about 4 or 5 steps with this past week. So if it's change of formation, if it's change of personnel, it's doing whatever you can to get a result, and a result to us now unfortunately is a draw. So
yeah, and it's hard to see, because the concession of a goal, like you're going to concede. I don't even still know. I was saying earlier on, I watched the goal back from the Ukraine game about 20 times. I still am unsure how the hell the ball went into the back of the net, and I can't. Damien Delaney was talking about it at Virgin last night, and he was putting a bit of blame on Hendrick, saying Kelleher deserved no blame at all. I can't fathom it at all. I just don't even understand how the hell the ball went into the back of the net, right? But the thing is, we're going to concede a goal or two at international level anyway. It's just at the other end, we just look so devoid of any creativity or any, like the Armenia game, I think we could have been playing for another 4 or 5 hours and we would never have created one clean cut chance. Like, so whatever about the concession at the back, and like there'll be tweaks there and there'll be things we can do right. It's that other bit that looks to be the most major concern, with no obvious solution. Like maybe the change of formation, Karen, changes all that, who knows. And the other aspect of it is, you mentioned about Stephen Kenny and the comments and that sort of stuff. Like, he's obviously, to be very critical of him, coming out after the games, there's almost an Arsene Wenger element of his comments post-game in the deniability, how he's denying almost what's going on the pitch. Is there an element of that, you know, you talk about the fans, when they're looking at that, does he need to engage a little bit more in the reality and what's going on the pitch in his post-match interviews?
Possibly, but he doesn't seem like someone who's ever going to come out and criticise any one line of the team, because he's the one who's put them out, and that's going to add to his scrutiny and the scrutiny of the team. And they look fragile, particularly when Seamus Coleman isn't there. Like, you look to the pitch and you're wondering where the leaders are, particularly once you go out of the back line. I mean, yes, there's a lot of young players, but there's people who you see demanding things from each other. It looked quiet, you know. There was a few finger pointing things at the start of the match from the back, saying, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that? But in terms of talking to each other and movement up front, I was just watching it from kind of a high angle, and it didn't look like they were engaging well with each other. So I think that there's definitely a lack of leadership, and maybe that just comes from lack of belief, or I'm not quite sure what it is. But yeah, he does need to be, I think he is realistic afterwards, but he's never going to say what the journalists and stuff are saying about this being one of the worst bunch of players, because he's the one picking them. But this is the position he's in, so he has to find a way to do better with what he has. I would be going back probably just one to two players up front, and seeing what we can do there. Getting the ball out wide, I thought that the fullbacks were poor. We haven't seen an overlap in I don't know how long, because of the way we're playing, because I don't think the three up front really know how to play that formation. So again, there's a lot of scrutiny on the coaching, scrutiny on the type of players we have, and if this is the correct formation for them.
Do you now think Ireland are going in the wrong direction, Karen?
It's been so long since we've had a real cause for optimism that it's hard to say if we're going backwards. The group of players that we have, we're not seeing week in, week out, you know, so the same connection with the fans isn't there. All we see is is what we get when we look at the international games. And we do see them working hard, and we have had a good run of results, or good performances at least, in the last 6 months. So I don't know, it's a hard one to put your finger on, but it's getting hard to remain almost interested in this Nations League already, and you're looking towards the future and you're wondering where it's coming from. I probably would have preferred to watch the under-21 games this week than what we've seen from the seniors.
Yeah, it's an indictment, and I know that obviously the match-going fans will get back into it when they head along for the Scotland game at the weekend, and there's a different tone about the people who turn up at the games than the people who are chirping from the sidelines. But even the most optimistic who'll be at the game on tomorrow will be hoping for a brighter start, and that we can actually get something done and turn the narrative here a bit. Karen, thanks a million. Catch up with you again.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Karen Duggan there, host of the Koi Gig podcast, and we'll have much more chat obviously about that game in the lead into it tomorrow, and hopefully that everything can turn a little bit for us and we get back on an even keel. Right, it is 8:10. You're watching OTB AM on this Friday morning. During the ad break, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod, where an angry and befuddled Paddy and James complained to Tommy about the more soulless games at Croke Park. The Football Pod, in partnership with AIB, who are proud sponsors of the GEA Senior Football Championship. You can check out #TheToughest for more on that. And speaking of the GEA, we're going to be back live in studio. The former Meath manager Andy McEntee, fresh from ending his 6-year tenure. We'll see you after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I am a little bit of a pessimist, and
you are.
You know,
but we know that.
But that's my job. You're supposed to bring the positivity here.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews, and so much more.
I told you, when you're famous, you just got to be, you've got to be ready for these kind of tweets.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
Nonsense. I'm annoyed with this. Jesus Christ. How many times are they going to do this? Like those games, Kildare and Mayo, Roscommon and Clare, there will be 40,000 people between both those games. Why in God's name are they continuing to do this? Anyone who had the misfortune of watching the Leinster hurling final on Saturday night was the latest disaster that they've had in Croke Park, with no atmosphere, no energy in the game. Kildare Mayo, play that one in Portlaoise on Saturday, play the other one in Tullamore, and you'll get full houses for both of them.
They don't get to the same level as a game that's packed out in terms of the crowd. The crowd offer a component to the game, a massive component to the game. So it can't get to the white heat sense of a championship match without a full crowd. That's one of the most important parts, is the crowd going mental as it comes down the stretch and the game is close.
It's championship. So, that's what championship is about.
When there's people, it's the same thing on Sunday, lads. Like Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Cork and Limerick, 10,000 at that.
10,000.
Play that game in Ennis, they're not going to change. You don't listen to anyone. Like say the GAA are doing their own thing, and fair play to them. But as a product, the amount of this is literally coming up every week with these games. People are going, Croke Park's an amazing place. Save it for the biggest games where there's got to be an atmosphere where you're going to get at least 60,000+.
Yeah,
it's not even going to come close to that. And on Saturday, asking people to come up to Dublin, obviously the stuff outside of that economically with travel and hotels and all that stuff.
So true.
It's just nonsense. But they don't care. They're not listening to us.
Yeah.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Alright, it is 8:15. You're watching OTB AM on this Friday morning. Owen and myself, and we're delighted to say that we're joined in the studio now by the now former Meath manager, Andy McEntee. Good morning to you, Andy.
Morning, lads. Yeah.
Still feel a bit weird, the former Meath manager?
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard it, really, I've read it often enough, but that's the first time I've heard it. So, look at it. I mean, it is what it is.
You get attached to the role, obviously, over 6 years, and the intensity of it almost.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you get... look at, the title itself, it doesn't mean a whole pile, but, it takes over your life, I suppose, for 6 years, and before you know it, 6 years are over. So it seems like a relatively short time, but it's been eventful enough, I'm sure.
What were the main emotions during the week since you've announced it?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think this was my second term. It was the third year of my second term, so it was a natural ending. Really, I think most managerial stints have a natural ending, and it probably was. It was coming to that, really.
Did you kind of know that this year, or did you think if we could put a bit of a run together here, we could reinvigorate this thing, or had you it in your head that it probably would be the last year anyway?
I didn't, I hadn't put much thought into it. I mean, I think the episode before Christmas, probably made that a little bit evident that this was going to be probably the last. And I think that had an impact. Unfortunately, I think that had an impact probably on everybody,
including the players. Yeah,
I think so. I think it came out of the blue. Really, we weren't. We were due to have another year there. It didn't. We weren't expecting it. I don't think the players expected it. I think it undermined a little bit of confidence in the players themselves and in the players' confidence in us, and it just didn't help.
It feels like a bit of a time since that actually happened. Like, so from your own perspective, like, what happened?
Well, there was I suppose there was a small group of people within the Meath County Board who felt it was time for change, and unfortunately, I think they went about it the wrong way. I think a lot of people, maybe, I'm not sure what their agenda was or what their best intentions was. And unfortunately, I don't feel it was in the best interest of Meath football. But that's. I don't want to really dwell too much on it, apart from the fact to say that it certainly didn't help the situation.
2021 was that weird COVID dictated league. Obviously everything was sort of out of kilter, wasn't it, in terms of the usual expectations of what you might have of a typical season. But just to refresh people, so the Division 2 North, you'd wins over Westmeath and Down, you go on to lose to Mayo, and then by a goal to Kildare in the semis. And Leinster goes alright, pretty good win over Longford, lose by 1-3 to Dublin. Absolutely no shame in that. That's plenty of teams would bite your hand off for that, and the fight back, particularly in the second half. I'm just trying to create the context in the lead into all of that, just to remind people where that was at, and also, by the way, maybe as good a test as Dublin had in the previous 10 years, and that was it because of the reduced format. That was the end of the year. There was no more backdoor aspect to it, and that was July the 18th. What happened then between that and was the first week of October when the county board stuff came out?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing that I was aware of. I mean, I remember I got a phone call from a brother of mine just to ask me was I actually ratified, and I was under the assumption that I had been, and I spoke to someone at the county board, and they said, well, it's happening this week. It's only a matter of form. And there was something going on in the background, obviously, and the county board, I think a lot of the guys there were caught unawares. So
were you 2 years into your second 3-year term?
Yeah.
And typically that's what would happen. You'd get to the end of the year, they'd say, we just have to have this meeting, we'll ratify it there, and then on we go.
You have your review, you have your annual review. I had that. We spoke. I mean, as far as I was concerned, that was done deal. Let's get ready for and we were in the middle of preparing, for the year ahead.
They'd carried out a review into 2021. Was that an exceptional review, or was that just the usual?
Yeah, it was standard enough. We would have had a review every year, so I mean, standard enough.
What does that involve? Is it do you sit down with them? Do you sit down with them and set? I'm not familiar with the GA management piece. Obviously, when you're soccer manager or rugby, they obviously sit down, they go, right, here are the targets for the year, and we either meet them or we don't, and we decide where we go. Is it the same sort of thing, or how do you?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's standard enough. You sit down, where do you feel, we could be doing better? How did, we go through various aspects of management, how did that go for you? How can we improve things? What are your targets for next year? Where did we fall down last year? Usual.
Are they setting out here's the expectation, here's what success looks like this year, or is it as detailed as that from their side?
No, not necessarily. No. Yeah, but I mean, it was very clear. Everybody had their targets. We've had our targets all along, and that was to be as competitive as possible, and hopefully come out of Leinster, and that's been our target from the word go. So that hadn't changed.
Did you get a sense during that review that there was kind of choppy waters coming in a few months' time?
No, absolutely not. No.
Like almost reassurance by the sounds of things. That.
Well, I mean, it certainly, we went through that, and I had spoken with the chairman on numerous occasions, and the first I had heard of it was that phone call that I got, and the first he had heard of it was the phone call I made to him. So there was, I don't. This is probably going on long enough now, lads.
No, yeah. Look, we can absolutely move on, and there's loads of stuff to talk about. I do think that it does speak to the behaviours of a lot of county boards. I don't think Meath is necessarily that unique in that way, and there's a bigger question about how well served county teams are by sports, the administration of the county team, and I suppose that's probably the reason that it's interesting to us to.
Sure, I get that. I mean, look, I would have to say that, I've been very well supported by the number of county chairmen that I've worked under. Yeah. From Conor Tormey to Peter O'Halloran and John Kavanagh. I think they were caught on a little bit unawares, and I'd be suspicious of some of the motives behind some of the people. I mean, that's that brought this about. I mean, I definitely wouldn't feel that it was in the best interests of Meath football.
And the clubs didn't feel that, obviously, either.
No, and that was, the clubs were, pretty much, it was a pretty, pretty good vote of confidence from the clubs.
Did you come close to just saying, I'm out?
Very close.
At that time? Very close,
yeah. And we would have, we as a management team and as a backroom team, we got together. And I suppose one of the key issues at the time was the timing of all of this.
Yeah, late in the year.
It was late in the year. Had we decided to say, okay, well, we haven't got the backing of the county board, it's time for us to move on, it would have left the players in a pretty poor position. And that was a big enough, I suppose, factor in us deciding to stay on.
What's interesting around that, and I guess this kind of goes for all these sorts of stories, is that there's almost a vacuum of information sometimes, and I'd imagine that in that vacuum comes all sorts of talk here and there, and this prevails all the way through this year, where I guess conversations are happening around your own position in the public, online, all that sort of stuff. Did you ever feel those external conversations happening, or feel like there was a cloud over the whole thing coming into this year then?
I think there probably was, yeah. I think that was, that had a big influence on a lot of the talk around, a lot of the narrative around it. It certainly didn't help. And as I say, our only concern really was the players. And players being human, they would have got a sniff that this is probably, my last year. And that changes things. You see it in... They don't mean. I don't think players mean anything by it. I think it's just human nature. You see it in other sports. When they know a manager is moving on, things change, and it's hard. It's hard to get over that. And as a management team, I'd have to say we weren't able to manage that properly to kind of get everyone to ignore the narrative that was going on around.
Would you change anything if you had your time back, knowing what you now know?
Oh, look at, I mean, if my aunt had,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think if that whole episode had happened earlier, I'd say our decision might have been different to stay with it.
As in you would have gone?
I'd say that's a possibility, yeah.
Do you when you're talking about the group, and we will move on, there's other stuff to talk about, but it is interesting to us, but when you talk about the group and how hard it is to get them, like the Ralph Rangnick stuff, obviously has been going on in Man United over the last one, there's plenty of other examples. Is it hard? Do you just address that openly and go, listen, we all know where we are, we're going to give it a push for the year and on we go, or is it almost counterproductive to address it in that way, because at that point you're like, they are absolutely going to check out if they know for sure that is the last year. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, look, I mean, these guys have been a great group to work with. Really, they have. Very open. We've been very open about everything that's going on. So nobody was hiding behind anything here. We all knew, and I'm not saying this. The truth of the matter is, we didn't come up with the performances this year. And I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'd say it was a factor. There was a number of other factors really involved. We certainly, everybody was aware.
Yeah. Do you go into the dressing room after the Clare game, or how do you? I think was it Monday you announced that you were leaving? Do you go into the dressing room afterwards and tell them, listen, it's been great and I'm out of here, or how did you tackle that one?
Well, I didn't want. It was an emotional enough dressing room, to be perfectly honest. Afterwards, I've battled. There's a good few guys in there that I was with in the minor scene since 2012. So it's you get very close to a lot of these guys. It wasn't. I didn't think it was the place to say it. I said nothing. We went back to the hotel, and I suppose unfortunately, there was a few people around that I didn't really want to be talking in front of to the group in front of. So I left it at then. I mentioned it to the guys on the bus on the way home. Yeah.
Anybody you speak to about your tenure there was much more about it wasn't just about managing a Gaelic football team, that you were much more invested in the player, the individual, the progress off the pitch as much as anything else almost. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we've tried to look after the players as much as we possibly can, and it's great to see guys progressing as people and as men, as opposed to just footballers. So, and I think we've done a pretty good job on that. I mean, one of the things that I'd be happiest with really are the people that I've surrounded the team with. From medical team to training staff to mind coaches, stuff like that, professional coaches, football coaches, Colm Nally, all the guys the selectors that have worked with me. I'd be very happy with my choice of the team around the team.
Has it surprised you? Did it surprise you, the level of work that had to go into it?
Not really, no. I mean, it is. The truth of the matter is, I think the nature of the beast you're talking about here. I mean, I just. It's all encompassing. It takes over. I mean, there's somebody asked me, would you go through a day without thinking about football? I said, definitely not. Would you go through an hour? I don't think so.
Right. You'd be upset. Like, is that about? That's about every part of it, is it? It's not just about how do we get the tactics right. It's like.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so much involved. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, guys are trying to juggle an awful lot of things: college, work, relationships. There's an awful lot of things that you're trying to deal with.
Are you a tactician or are you a man manager?
I'd like to think a little bit of both, but I suppose, I mean, I would think my relationship with players is probably I would like to think. They might say different.
What does that look like? Is it giving them a buzz in the middle of the week to see how they're getting on? Is it catching them after training, or how close would you be to those players?
No, it's a combination of all of that, really. And it's meeting fellas for coffee every now and again, a lot of phone calls, a lot of one-on-ones, smaller groups, trying to help fellas with college life, with interviews, with bits and pieces. So,
at what point did you feel that the group was in the palm of your hand the most? Would it be fair to say like the summer of 2019 or maybe 2020? I guess maybe that last Super 8 summer when Meath were in it. Is that when things were going best for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think qualifying for the Super 8s was great. That league before, when we went from Division 2 up to Division 1, there was some really good performances. Not that we didn't win them all. We lost a very close one to Donegal up in Ballybuffet at the start of the year on a very frosty night, and we conceded a late goal to lose by a point, I think it was. And then we kind of responded really well. We had a great win against Kildare and Navan, a last minute penalty. Barry Dara scored a last minute penalty, and that's when it really started to build, I think, really.
And that building, that progress, how hard is it, I guess, given the geography of Meath and like being blunt about it, given the fact that yourselves in Kildare, regardless of how much progress you guys make during the league, beating Dublin or coming up against Dublin is something that you guys will have to do pretty much every year if you're going to be one of the best teams in Leinster. And how much of a possibility is that game there to give you just a bit of a knockback every single year?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're coming up against, you know, what was the best team in the history of the GAA, or the most successful team in football history. So coming up against that every year is a setback. And I suppose the last 2 years, you know, when you get beaten and there's nothing else after that, it means you're away from the lads for another 6 months or 5 months or whatever it is. And that's a challenge, you know, when you're trying to close a gap on someone like Dublin, who are going longer together every year, consistently every year. It's a big challenge.
And it feels as if the challenge almost gets greater year after year. The more games they win, the harder it is for you to knock them off their perch. Was that the feeling this year, that maybe we're as far away as we've ever been from Dublin?
Yeah, this year was disappointing, but I suppose, you know, the form line going into it was suggesting we didn't really play well this year, apart from we had a good performance against Cork in the league, we had a good performance against Derry in the league, and outside of that we've got a few results, but we kind of scraped through a little bit. Wicklow was okay, but probably only okay. So going into the Dublin game, I suppose the narrative going around was that Dublin were on the slide and stuff like that, which I never really bought on in the first place, but ultimately we didn't play well enough, we weren't good enough, and that was hard to get over.
It's really easy for us to sit here and say that, you know, people need to believe that they can beat Dublin in order to beat Dublin, but as somebody who's actually managed against them and played them most years in your tenure, does that belief take a bit of a hit after a period of time?
It does if you have performances. I mean, you don't have to be off by much, you know, against Dublin. If you have an off day, you're going to get punished, and punished severely. Like we had a really good performance in the league in Parnell Park against them, with a lot of newcomers on the team, and it gave everybody a huge boost to performance. But then we turn around in the championship, and it's a different, you know, playing in Croke Park is just a different, it's a different experience. It's a different game. The pace of the game is totally different. So when you come up against them, and as if you're not fully at it, you're going to get punished very badly.
You were with the Longford manager on last week, and he was talking about the order of preference of competitions. He was like, the league is number one, Tailteann Cup for them after that. It's almost felt like he was saying sort of the O'Byrne Cup was nearly ahead of the Leinster Championship in terms of relevance for them, because Leinster was just not a factor for them. You're at a different level to Longford, but what's your thoughts on that same point? Is Leinster fit for purpose? Should we scrap all of that and start afresh? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's just Leinster's not fit for purpose. I think the provincial system is broken. I mean, you look at the amount of games that even just purely the amount of games that's played in Leinster and Ulster, compare that to Connacht and Munster, it just doesn't make sense. You know, if you brought an outsider in and you said, well, there's 32 counties, all right, you know, London, New York, you can include them, but 32 counties, and there's 4 groups, and there's 5 in one, and there's 11 in the other, and the reward for winning one is the same as the reward for winning the other. It just doesn't make sense. I've always been of the opinion there's a natural enough system there. You take divisions 1 and 2 and you make groups of that. Everybody gets their games, and you have a senior and you have an intermediate.
And everybody just signs up to that. Did you sit down I presume you sit down as a group at the start of the year and say, this is our targets for the year? And I mean the management and the players specifically.
Oh yeah, I mean we'd have certain targets. I mean, and the targets have always been, you know.
Would winning Leinster be one?
Sure, yeah, it was. Yeah.
And discussed as because like you said yourself, Dublin probably the greatest team of all time. You know, in the middle of that, when you're sitting down having that conversation, it's a genuine, we want to win Leinster. Was it number one target? Was it?
Yeah, well, the first number of years, the thing that we really concentrated on was getting into Division 1.
Right.
And then, you know, you take it from there. But I think the last 2 years, we would. I think it's fair to say that we would have said, okay, Division 2 is fine. You know,
Right.
I mean, it's very competitive. You get great games. We knew what it was like to be in Division 1, and unless you're, again, a bit like the Dublin thing, unless you're right at it from the word go in Division 1, you know, you just get used to losing. And we had a year there where we had some great games, but we ultimately lost everyone bar one, the last one against Monaghan. Great occasions, great competition, but we weren't strong enough to finish out games. Those last 10-15 minutes, strength and depth wasn't what other counties had, and we ended up losing a lot of games in those last 10 or 15 minutes. So being in, my attitude certainly changed from being in Division 1 wasn't
Really?
It wasn't all
You're,
what
you're
we
better
were.
off winning a few games in Division 2.
Oh, I think
than-
so.
Right.
Yeah, because you know winning's a habit, but so is losing.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Even the like exposure to the better teams and how that bring you on as a group. Ultimately, if you're getting beaten, then it's a bit of a waste of time.
I wouldn't say it's a waste of time. I mean, you get your eyes open as to where you need to be at. But I mean, you get every bit as competitive games. You know, for us at the stage of development that we were at, you get every bit as competitive games in Division 2.
When did the abuse start? Shane has obviously been tweeting about it during the week, and it's even I see on the back page of the paper today. Meath hit out at abuse of McEntee and squad, and the county board had a statement out about it yesterday.
Yeah, look, I'm not a social media man. That's been there from the off.
Has it?
It
On
has.
the social media side.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, the likes of these people who get involved in social media are looking for a platform, are looking for a bit of airtime, and I suggest we don't waste airtime talking about them.
One question I do want to ask, we just put Shane's tweet up. He said, because Em Fitzmaurice had written about it a few years ago, about letters he used to get to the house. Did you get letters?
Yeah.
Like, what was the nature of them?
Well, they weren't very nice. You know, they were, you know, and you know, the people that send the letters don't even have the balls to write their name to it.
Anonymous.
Yeah.
Always.
Oh yeah.
When was the first one that you got?
Oh, I think it was probably in year 1.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Would you stop opening them after a while, or are you?
No, you get to know the writing, you get to know the
It's the
handwriting.
same people, sort of. Is that right?
Yeah.
What sort of stuff are they saying?
I mean, you know, the first one started with, you know, Ballyboden was a fluke. I don't know how you managed that, and a lot of it referred to, you know, Shane picking Shane being part of the team, which is totally unfair, you know. And it's a way of getting at me more than Shane, I'm sure. But
Was it stuff that you needed to go to the guards about, or?
I don't think so. No. Again, as I say, you look at, and I don't look at too many tweets, or you know, you look at what's been written, how it's been written, and you kind of say, well, who's writing this? And, you know, how much weight are you going to put in somebody's opinion like that? And I suppose that's the thing that I never really get about social media. I mean, you have people who are looking for a little bit of attention, and probably never been asked for their opinion before, and all of a sudden they have a platform. So, hence my reluctance really to give them that platform.
I think maybe Emma Fitzmaurice as well would have made a point at the time that there was maybe abuse directed at the player as well at that point. It was only ever you in that Meath setup who received letters, was it? There was nobody else in the setup or anybody else with a
Not
concern?
that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
When you're recognising the handwriting, so you see it on the envelope, did you get to a point where you're just like, bin, or are you?
Well, you certainly want to get to it before my wife gets to it.
Yeah.
You know, and that. I mean, I can deal with the likes of that, but when it starts impacting on your family, it's kind of hard to take.
Was it abusive or was it threatening, or both?
Abusive more than threatening.
Right.
Yeah.
It does have an impact on the family and on you, no matter how much you try to shut it out, doesn't it? When it's literally landing in your letterbox.
Sure. Yeah. I'd be genuinely more concerned about, you know, Shane is the guy's out there. He's the guy. So more concerned about the people around me than, you know. ultimately I've put them in this situation, you know.
There's also kind of like a pressure on that as well, Andy, to kind of be the stoic figure, to be the manager, to be the fella who almost says, I can brush this off. But I'd imagine as well, they're just not nice things to read. You don't want to be receiving them at the same time, as much as you have to feel I'm the manager and I'm kind of the elder statesman of this dressing room, almost, with those young lads in the dressing room, that I'd say you can kind of quickly brush that sort of stuff off without considering what it's actually doing to you and how you feel about it as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably safest to brush it off if you stop and think about it too much. Nobody likes to read, abusive things being said about them. One of the reasons I would have stopped, looking at any sort of social media, I don't go on there, and it's safer for me. I'm protecting myself as much as anything else there on that one.
Do you think that the expectations of the public towards the team were in line with what they should be? Do you think they have realistic expectations to Meath fans?
Oh, well, it's something, and I didn't mention it in my statement last week. The vast majority of Meath fans are fantastic fans. We have some great supporters, and where I talk about you like this, I talk about getting letters, abusive letters. There's a man called Harry Smith he lives in Cullen. And I think he's lived there Meath man, living in Cullen for the last 50 years. And I get a letter from him before every game and after every game, talking about the game. I'm not sure what age Harry is, but he's a good age. Yeah. But if we were playing Down in the morning, he'd have a report on Down's last match from the local paper.
Way.
He'd send it on to me. Fantastic. And you come down, there's another letter from Harry. Yeah. Another lady, Anne Farrell, from Meath woman living in Tullamore. She'd constantly send letters,
Yeah. A good support network there, despite the...
Fantastic. Kids, people bringing their kids along, genuine Meath supporters. And your genuine Meath supporter, I've always said it to the lads, will forgive anything, provided you give a certain type of performance. And that's what they appreciate.
You'll miss that.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, that game I spoke about against Kildare in the league in, it must have been 19, I think it was 2019. The coldest day I've ever been on a pitch. The rain and sleet and snow was coming inside. It was a gale force wind, and the Meath people were just bananas at the end of it. So, yeah.
Would you go back into an inter-county job?
No.
Never. It's done now.
No. Who else would I manage?
And in terms of the life of an inter-county manager, is that something that you're kind of like, God, thankfully that's over in one way, and it doesn't really appeal to you again in the future?
No, look, I wouldn't say that. It's been a great experience. I got to work with some really, really good people. Really, really good players. I mean, some of them we have some excellent players and a lot of really good young players coming through. So, it has been a good experience. I'll miss it. I mean, you get hooked on the likes of this, so you will miss it. But it's been, I suppose, I've gone from playing to a decent age. I played up until I was 42. With the club in Dunboyne, a senior with the club in Dunboyne, and I went straight into management from then. So that's been 16 years now. So I guess my wife probably deserves a break at this stage. Although be careful what you ask.
Well, you look at Mickey Hart up the road and plenty of others. Yeah. You would. It's Meath or bust for you. Is that what you're saying? That you wouldn't have the same graph if you were in another county, or?
Oh, I couldn't. I couldn't see it. No.
You might go back into a club at some point or another. Or?
I don't know. I mean, look, it's early.
It's very early, in fairness. Yeah.
It is early, yeah, and I've a few things that I need to probably need to do a bit of work for a change. The guys in Focus Capital would say he could do with doing a bit of work probably.
You need that leeway and a holiday, of course, as well. I'm sure at some point.
Yeah, we'll do a holiday. We're heading to Portugal end of August for a friend's wedding, so we're going to make the most of that.
Yeah, well, look, you've been really good with your time this morning. It was good to get that in. So I know sometimes it's not easy necessarily to talk about that thing, particularly when you've been in the middle of it, and you'd rather shut that chapter, I'm sure, and and move on. But I do think that it's important in the context, as I said, of sports administration on the one side and how we're served by it in this country, and also in terms of the abuse. I'm sure there's plenty of managers up and down the country listening to what you've had to say this morning and taking something from it. So we appreciate that.
No, you're very welcome. Yeah.
Thanks a million for coming in.
Thanks for bringing me in, lads.
8:45 Friday morning. We've loads still to come. Alan Quinlan and Ronan are going to get stuck into all the weekend's rugby. Interesting times at La Rochelle, of course, so we'll get into all that. And Damien, Browne and Fergus Farrell will be live on the line at, I believe, about 4 o'clock New York time as they get ready to set sail for Galway, or to row to Galway, more accurately, which will take them the best part of 55 days or more. Right, before all of that, John Giles was on with Nathan on the show last night and reflected on Ireland's performance against Ukraine. Back after these.
It's hard to think of a time when Irish football has found itself at a lower ebb in terms of quality and depth.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is unfortunately, I hate to say it, Stephen has the least gifted group of players than I can remember, Nathan. And that's gone back a long time, and in my time and before. We had a lot of first division players, what we consider first division players in those days. That I don't see that ability now. Although I would expect us to do better in the last 2 matches than we've done.
You've been around Irish football long enough. You know how these things work. That when you have a couple of bad results, the pressure comes on quickly. Yeah. With all you've been saying in mind, like, do you look at Ireland and think a different manager could do any better, or that actually do you look at it and think Stephen Kenny is getting as much as anybody can get out of these players?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't see a great group of players that have been mismanaged, Nathan. Let's put it that way. I think I think the last 2 results have been very, very, very bad for Stephen, and I'm sure he's surprised himself because before, again, I keep repeating myself here, before the breakup, the matches we won well and looked really good, Nathan. So hopefully this is just a week. Like with the players we have, there's one discussion there. I think it's the weakest group of players I've seen for a long, long time with the Irish team. But those group of players have played better before the break, and hopefully they can play better again than they did in these particular 2 matches. Because I fancied them. Certainly, if I'd known beforehand that the Ukraine would field the team that they did, I would say, well, I fancy us to win that. And certainly in the first match, the Armenian, that. And it hasn't happened. So hopefully it's just for these particular 2 matches and the players and Stephen to pick it up again. That's all I hope for. But it is another job to do now.
Yeah, you can check out the full piece with John up on the OTB Sports app right now, or indeed on our YouTube page. Plenty of comments coming in this morning. Dara Howley on Twitter after our chat with Andy there. Most people who feel they need to write abusive letters to managers are usually very inadequate and low in self-success within their own life. Echo that all day long. James McCullough, I was initially sceptical of Kenny, especially after the Slovakia defeat. However, I'm firmly behind him now, as he's offered us something different and has a good young bunch of players.
That's interesting. Like, that's interesting. That's still the positivity of it at this time. Like, that definitely seemed to be the case this time last week, but it's literally this time last week. Is it possible for things to go from what I would have said is a very, very reasonable thing to say in the space of a week for that to seem like an eyebrow-raising comment? Maybe we're just completely in a state of frantic emotion and we just don't trust this team or anything about it, that we're allowing ourselves to be so up and down in terms of how we're kind of feeling about this team and how we're talking about this team.
It's the nature of international football to a degree as well, because they obviously have this cluster of games and then it's done for a while, and that's all you have to go on. And if it's stank the house out, which it's done, then that hangs around for a while. And I am a little bit surprised to see the optimism. Like I said with Karen when she was on here last Friday, that was how we started the conversation. There's a hang of optimism in the air. What are we thinking? But that's gone. Like, I mean, even the most reasonable fans now are, where it's more hope than anything else, isn't it? Against Scotland, like the evidence of what should happen.
What if Ireland play well and get a draw tomorrow? What does that?
Steadies the ship.
And I think steady the ship. Do you mean steady the ship so it's like we're back on track again, or
I think that it removes some of this stuff, doesn't it? how do we get into shot
So
there?
one draw against Scotland in the Nations League will mean that Stephen Kenny has gone from job on the line to job not on the line.
I don't know if it's as black and white as that. There's obviously a scale
That's how
of...
it feels is my point. It feels like it's very black and white.
The
at the
scale
moment.
of over here, he's going to get sacked, and over here, we need to sign this man
Yeah.
up for another 20 years, right? So you move along that scale depending on performances and results. How far along that scale are we at the minute? We're well over the halfway line here, you know? Like, he's veering more towards that. A draw against Scotland, unquestionably, pulls it back a little bit more in the other direction.
And we were...
as sports fans, I think it's fair enough, no?
I'm just saying we were well over the halfway line in the other direction a week ago.
We were.
A week, a long time in football.
It was, but also the weight of pull in the other direction to continue that analogy has to be based on the fact that it was Armenia and Ukraine seconds. Darragh O'Toole says maybe it's the expectations of the Irish team that needs to change. Probably also a reasonable point. And Fergus Keogh, good players and good teams are constantly moving to keep the opposition thinking. Poor players and poor teams stand in the same place waiting for the ball. So there we go. Right, it is 10 to 9. As I said, we've no live crappy quiz for you this morning. Owen is back, but he literally only tuned in this morning, so there's no live crappy quiz. We'll be back again with that next Friday morning. And we've Fergus, Farrell and Damien Browne standing by as well to come to us live from New York. But before all of that, another dynamic duo, Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan. Good morning, lads.
Morning, lads. How are you?
All good. How are you doing? Rare that we have you on together. This is a surprise and a delight.
Yeah, I texted Colm at 6:50 a.m. I bit of scatterbrain this week, Adrian, so I wasn't organised. So I hope I'm not jumping in on Quinny's gig.
Well, when Colm got in contact with him afterwards, he insisted that it wasn't going to happen, but eventually relented.
I won't get a word in edgeways.
There's plenty to get to. The Toulouse this weekend, Ronan, to begin with, maybe is probably the best place to kick things off, and then Cast, I think, in the semi if you get there. The Lyon game, obviously, last weekend was exactly what you needed, I suppose, to continue this. Does it almost feel? I know we've chatted a little bit last year and this year about sort of cup final week after week. Are you still kind of in that mode now?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's hopefully there's 3 games left. The Lyon game was a little bit different, I suppose, in the fact that the only way we wouldn't qualify if they scored a bonus offensive, a try-winning bonus. So in France, the way it works is you score 3 more tries than the opposition. So it's not 4 tries. So you have to outscore your opposition by 3 tries. So 7-4, 5-2, 3-0, you get the 5 points. So we couldn't let Lyon do that because we were 4 points ahead of them in the table. So a 5-0, they would have gone ahead of us. So at the latter stages of the game, it was comfortable. We were good, but at half time it was 3 tries to 1 to them. We probably had a grounds for a legitimate try disallowed just before half time off a driving maul. But going in at half time, 3-1, it was not panic, but a little bit of, okay, this can fall apart if we're not careful. But we responded really well in the first 12 minutes of the second half. And the end game then, I don't know, people probably saw a little bit of on Twitter, was hectic. The Lyon probably have 2 try scoring opportunities, and most unfortunate circumstances for them. They didn't get over the line, but a bonus point would have done, a defeat would have done for us as well.
Yeah, the gods are with you for sure. There hasn't been hangover, it seems anyway, from the Heineken Cup final. Does it feel as if it's almost giving you a bit of a wind in the sails?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it was. The turnaround was Saturday, Sunday, so that extra day playing Sunday night made a big difference. I think it meant that we could really probably enjoy the aftermath of Marseille, so that was good. I think we had 4 days of partying, which I think is very important, that you do that and you celebrate a big moment as it was. But then the latter part of the week we parked it and we moved on, and Lyon were good. Obviously winning the Challenge Cup, but I think talking to their guys and management afterwards, it wasn't really, I suppose, celebrated or appreciated maybe as much as they would have liked. So they were on for the game, and they had obviously good grounds to go for a bonus point win against us. But our 23 were good on the night.
4 days of partying.
Well, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but it wasn't like mayhem. It was just, I suppose, sitting down and having a lazy lunch and a good dinner, a barbecue. I think that's why we do it.
I'm wondering what's behind that grin. There's a bit more than that. I presume a few glasses of red. And
compared to Munster standards, it was tame. It was very tame. But you're trying to. It's not all about the field. I think that's where you make the difference is in connecting off the pitch and enjoying people's company. And it's very different club rugby in France, I think, to what you may perceive, but it's starting to get really, really enjoyable now.
There seems to be a bit of a sense over here, Ronan, right, that like if the Heineken Cup final was played again next weekend, that Leinster would come out on top, rightly or wrongly. And I wanted to put, Matt Williams was on with us during the week, and his comments probably summed it up better than most. He said, I got to disagree with everyone. La Rochelle were absolutely rubbish until the 64th minute. I don't think it was a great plan, as in La Rochelle's plan. I think Leinster stuffed up. And I wanted to put them to you, not in any kind of an incendiary way, other than you were on the line, and we were going to talk to Quinny about them anyway. And now seeing as you're here, we might as well get your reaction to it. What's your view on that idea, almost, if I could interpret it as to say that if it was to be played again, people are feeling that maybe Leinster will come out on top?
There's definitely good grounds for that. They're such a quality team. That we were very aware that we had one shot, and that's why cup finals are, and that's why you have to get the mindset right. That it's 80 minutes. I think these things aren't like the basketball where they're played over a 7-game series and you win 4-3. This is 80 minutes, and it's the exact same as winning a World Cup final. You don't have to be the best team for 4 years. You got to be the best team for 80 minutes in a quarterfinal, 80 minutes in a semi-final, and 80 minutes in a final, and that's how top level sport is decided. And I think it is a different mindset. I think it's interesting listening to that La Rochelle were rubbish, is it?
Yeah,
I think that's
until the 64th minute
incredibly inaccurate. But I suppose that's how Matt gets on the radio. I suppose that's what, or on TV. He has to be controversial, and that's his opinion. But I would contest that and wouldn't agree with that. I think we were inaccurate some times in, as I said, I think afterwards to you guys that, I think we did leave some scores out there, but the difference between not executing under immense pressure with a really good defence as opposed to being rubbish, their poles apart. So, I think it's a little bit of trash talk, but that's okay. That's what people are entitled to do.
Ultimately, the winning of a game in a cup final proves that it was a great plan anyway, right? I know you can't plan for every single eventuality in a game. You've just mentioned about what happened, obviously, at the Leon game at the weekend. Nobody plans for that stuff, but ultimately...
So what? It was a rubbish plan as well, is it? I didn't hear
I don't think it was a great plan, to be fair to him. It wasn't as...
but if you score 3 tries, it must be better than the opposition's plan. But I think we've given that enough airtime in terms of, I think maybe if it was Scott Robertson, we could have a debate about
it. What's your sense, Quinny, of as he's grinning? What's your sense there of after Heineken Cup final response from Leinster? Like they themselves didn't show much hangover, obviously, against Glasgow. They're headed into a game this weekend. It feels to me like there's no, from a Leinster point of view, putting that right. Like the URC ain't going to put that right over the next few weeks, no matter what happens. It's about getting back to a final, isn't it? And proving that they, in Matt's words, that they don't stuff up, or that they can get over the line.
Yeah, I think if they obviously win the URC, then they get over the loss of that final. if I say I agree with Matt, he'll fall out with me. But anyway, I don't entirely agree with Matt at all. I don't think Matt meant it in the way maybe that it's hard for Rog to hear the words rubbish. I think he highlighted a few things, and obviously I'll probably put this to Rog about the discipline. And it was probably one of the things that's for me in commentary, some of the penalties that La Rochelle gave away, I thought they were silly penalties and they made it difficult for themselves. But I thought what they did really well. To say a performance and a plan isn't right, I thought the plan that La Rochelle had, and it was a very obvious one because we spoke about it, Adrian, and it's no secret. The key to stopping Leinster's flow, because they're so accurate and so good with the ball and their cohesion and timing a pass and all that, it's brilliant. But if you encounter a side that are going to be up in your face, physical, aggressive, bring loads of emotion, and La Rochelle beat Bordeaux twice in their own 16. They beat Montpellier. They beat Racing. Did really well in their group stages as well. So probably not, going into the game, we all probably got it wrong to the point of saying that, look, I felt Leinster it was going to be very difficult. And look, Rog, it's for you as a coach, I met you before the game and I just thought you were relaxed, and it didn't surprise me, your self-belief and your confidence that your team would turn up and that you obviously had a plan. I met Victor Vito before the game. He told me it was the best training week that he'd seen your team for ages, that they were buzzing. So when you get a plan and a structure and you do so much of it right, defensively, absolutely brilliant, stopping Leinster from getting over the line. The one negative, if you lost the game, would have been the penalties, I thought. But I don't think Matt meant it in the way that you would.
And to be fair, look, I do want to be fair to Matt as well, that's a quote now, a direct quote, so I'm not misrepresenting it, but there's obviously a bigger context to his chat as well. Come here, I wanted to ask you, Ronan, we've only a few minutes left with you, and we'll talk to Quinny in a bit more detail about the URC semis, but the New Zealand tour obviously upcoming, the couple of interprovincials that we've had recently and who's played themselves in and out. We'll come to that in a second, but the 10 conversation is ongoing and will be, obviously, and will only get hotter, I presume, obviously, in the lead into the World Cup. No sense, Ronan, that you'd leave Sexton at home for this and give the contenders to the crown a shot on the front line, is there?
No, because Johnny, I think, is too important to the Ireland team. The scenario isn't really improving, I suppose, in the bigger picture either, in the fact that it's 15 months now from a Rugby World Cup, where I suppose events in Munster or performances in Munster aren't helping Joey Carberry at all, and the fact that it's a team devoid of confidence and probably difficult to establish what way they're playing the game. And I think always in teams, and I was most definitely a beneficiary of this next comment, is I think when your team goes well, your 10 gets overappreciated, and when your team goes poorly, your 10 gets underappreciated. So that's most definitely the case, I think, for Joey Carberry. I think it's hard for him to find his own form in a team that's struggling for form, and he needs games, and a lot of quality games, because I think he definitely has the natural attributes to push Johnny for that position.
Is that nearly to say, Ronan, that like if he's in that Ireland team, for example, so if he went to New Zealand and you give him a test or a couple of tests, that we'll see the true potential of him?
Yeah, that's probably a bit broad, but I think in the fact that Johnny's a competitor, but Johnny's 37 in the summer. There's very little playing at that level of test rugby with the belts that go around for 80 minutes. So you need two, but the difference, I suppose, the drop off between Johnny and the others at the minute is quite large. And that can be, I think, reduced maybe with good training sessions, but also you need to be playing games and you need to make mistakes and you need to be getting minutes in the saddle, and that's how you become better as a number 10. And remember, probably around 30 is when you hit your peak as a 10.
Would you throw him in then against New Zealand, Carberry?
I think he'll definitely be involved. Yeah, I think that fascinates me too, and the fact now for maybe because I'm involved so much in it. It's a 23-man game, Adrian. if people struggle with that, I think especially people of our generation, and the fact that the game has changed so much. It's a 23-man game. This thing is starting, but you need your playmakers, and especially at test level. Like, obviously, kicking goals is so important too. So you need 2 10s, but I think we know that Johnny is proven and still at that level. Underneath that, there's question marks over a lot of them.
Now that we've annoyed you for the morning, we let you off. Best of luck at the weekend.
You didn't annoy me one bit. No, it was good chat there. I enjoyed it.
As
to be continued.
To be continued. As Quinny said, he didn't get a word in edgeways, Raj. So by contract, obviously, we've got to give him a few minutes now.
Okay, see you.
Good man.
Cheers.
Thanks a million.
See you all.
We'll take on that point then, Quinny, just about the players who might be on the plane, I suppose, for New Zealand. Have there been some players over the last few weeks that have almost, and I mean maybe particularly the Munster, maybe a Munster tinted question, but have almost played themselves out?
It's been difficult. I think someone like Chris Farrell, who's played under Andy Farrell and Joe Schmidt and been really effective, and it's been difficult for him getting ahead of Henshaw, Aki, Ringrose for a number of years. Now you have James Hume, I think, who's after really jumping into that picture. If Munster are winning and going into the knockout stages, I think Chris Farrell then is, he still may go, but I just feel for him a little bit because even in the last couple of weeks against Leinster and against Ulster, I thought Chris Farrell, he's still making those carries. He's getting across the game line. He's looking for people running off his shoulders. So I still think he should go, but it depends how many midfielders they bring, but it could be difficult for him. I thought Alex Kendellen put himself in the picture, probably with the performance against Toulouse, but then again, difficult in those last 2 games. Even though he's making lots of tackles and he's all over the field, I think it's an incredible rise for him, given he's in the academy and where he's come from. The other players from Munster, look, I think Conor Murray, Keith Earls, Tadhg Byrne, Craig Casey, I think they'll all be in the mix. I don't think they'll be punished for probably a poor season for Munster, the way Munster finished off the season. But I was hoping for Thomas Ahern to get a good run of games, at the second half of the season and really kind of step up, because I still believe he's a player who can play international rugby. He hasn't got injured in that game in Ulster. So it's not easy when your team are not losing, because it's about perception. It's being in the limelight. But there's not many more who put their hands up and kind of put themselves in the picture. So that's probably difficult for them.
You're a big fan of Jimmy O'Brien.
Yeah, I am. I think the way he's played for Leinster this season has been phenomenal. I would have been very pro him being nominated in the first batch of European players after the pool games. We had to nominate 15 players to go forward to the knockout stages, and Jimmy O'Brien was in that group. The way he played in those pool games, the games against Bath, was it 4 tries over in Bath? I just think he's composure, control. He's very physical. Similarities to Hugo Keenan, doesn't make a mistake, seems to be a very intelligent rugby player, and I just think he's grown so much. He's got to go to New Zealand, I think, and I just think he's been absolutely brilliant. It's great to see Jordan Larmour as well come back and show his class in the last couple of weeks. He's had 2 tough injuries again this year, and last weekend against Glasgow he was just sensational. It was like a reminder that he hasn't gone away, and this is what he can do out of nothing. For Leinster, the other ones, then Joe McCarthy, I think, again, he's someone who'll go on the plane, and for such a young player, very, very physical. Ross Maloney, I think, obviously the way he's played for Leinster as well. So Frawley, I think he's someone who again, so there's a number of Leinster guys, but obviously they're getting to the European final, and you'd imagine that they'll get over the Bulls tonight, get into a final and probably win it. That's what we expect. You never know. Obviously, tonight is going to be a physical test for them, but I just think the way some of those players have played, and it's easier when you're on the front foot. Same for Ulster. Timoney has put himself back into the picture big time, you know, we spoke last week. James Hume was never going to be. He's not a bolter because, you know, I think he was touted last November, or the season he's had with Ulster. He's been absolutely brilliant.
You mentioned Ulster, so Stormers obviously in the semi-finals. Is there an element almost that beating Munster is a success for them already, Quinny, to have reached this stage, almost regardless, or is that too simplistic?
It depends what happens. It's very difficult for them. So if they lose against the Stormers in a tight game, obviously Dan McFarlane will be very disappointed. But you know, they've got near the end, if you like. It would be still very disappointed. But if they got walloped in South Africa and had a really poor performance, well then it doesn't really count for anything. I think Ulster's biggest problem over the years has been consistency, and they've shown with sporadic, brilliant performances at times, and what they can do when they get confident, their self-belief is up, when they execute well, they can be brilliant, to be a handful for anyone. The win in Toulouse was incredible, but then they come back to Dublin or back to Belfast and take a bit of mismanagement, poor defence, you know. So that's what Ulster unfortunately have done for the last number of seasons. So I still think they're capable of going to the Stormers. Like, the Stormers are finished second in the table. They actually lost the least amount of games, 4 games. And you think those 4 games were probably at the start. They were at the start of the tournament when they didn't have their international. So they've 2 draws in there. Leinster finished top. So it's a very difficult one. You know, they have the likes of Kitshoff, Malherbe, Herschel Yanches, Gallant, a lot of really top-class players. But I just don't know if they can play the pace and tempo that Leinster will bring. We'll see. For Ulster, what Ulster will bring. For Ulster, it's about bringing a physicality, particularly up front, and taking their opportunities. Conditions will be perfect. And I think if they get a flow into their game, well, their confidence, Hume, Balakoon, McCluskey, they can be devastating, as they showed last week.
Are you calling Leinster and Ulster, or how are you seeing it?
Well, I'm calling Leinster, I think. Look, Leinster beat the Bulls 31-3 at the start of the season. It's going to be a bit tighter than that. Marcel Coetzee was talking about that tempo and pace. So you're talking about Rodgers' plan. Can Jake White bring a plan to the RDS and stop Leinster and stop their flow? I think they'll bring a lot of energy early on, but I don't know if they'll be able to sustain it. So I think Leinster will win that one. I fancy Ulster a little bit. Definitely, I think they have a great opportunity, but it's hard to go to South Africa and win a game like this. I think the South African teams have brought a lot of quality to the competition. So look, it's probably going to be Leinster Stormers.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Jake White, after a smack talk about Connacht during the year, Quinny, we're all fired up about it. Nothing that riles us all up more than a bit of smack talk about Connacht. Good man. Thanks a million. Catch up with you early next week. Thanks for that, Alan Quinlan. On the line there, Ronan O'Gara before that. That's our rugby coverage for this morning. And as I said, we'll pick it up again next week, post those semis, and get Quinny's thoughts on that come Monday morning. It is 13 minutes past 9. It's Friday morning. We're delighted to have you along with us. Plenty of comments flooding into us on all sorts of fronts. We'll try and come to some of those before we leave you this morning. But you are watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here is what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold, Emmanuel Petit. 3 o'clock is Friday Night Racing live in your ears. At that point, Johnny and Ger. Liam Coyle, Team 33 League of Ireland legend at 4, and the life and times of Achill boxer Johnny Kilban at 6 o'clock on OTB Gold as well. You can follow us on all of our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube as well. Be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the very latest in sports content and analysis. And during the next ad, you're going to hear and get a sense of how incredibly successful, that's what it says in front of me here, Team OTB's efforts were at last weekend's Tri-Thigh, with a teaser of the pre-race nerves that we just simply embrace. So enjoy it. Team OTB, of course, taking on Tri-Thigh, all in association with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. You can see whoop.com for more. Back after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
No, you never talk about the money.
Right, so with Liverpool in the 80s, you'd no idea?
No. Well, the only idea was that Kenny was on far more than we were.
United's wage bill is
significantly higher than Liverpool's. You've got players like Anthony Martial earning more money than Mohamed Salah. The problem at United is it's 5, 6, 7 different players.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
It's the water I'm scared of. If I get out of the water in one piece, follow Brian O'Driscoll on the bike, get right out in his wake, take all the good air behind him.
How today getting me down here to the fucking start line? They've appropriately given you 13 there.
Good. What's going on? How are you?
Oh, now we're in. Now we're good.
I literally just got that wrapped all around my wheel a second ago. Some guy had to help me. Some guy had to help me get this thing in my spokes.
He's like, who is this Egypt? Rookie.
God help this poor unfortunate.
How are we feeling? Not good. Jared looks, you look so fucking professional, Jared. I didn't actually even recognise you there. Just the only bits you need.
What are you planning for the swim? What sort of...
I did 50 flat out. I do it in about a minute. But I won't be doing 250 flat out, so it's about 8 or 9 minutes.
8 or 9 minutes?
Yeah, if I was doing... Well, it's only just...
Take your time.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
A few comments in. Alan O'Flynn, finals are all about winning, so hats off to La Rochelle who did a job on the day. Damien says, disingenuous to Ronan O'Gara considering the time he gives to OTB. Not quite sure what he means by that. Leinster sour grapes with added salt, says Dave Cos. Somebody else was wondering a bit earlier on if you'd brought me back a continental cheese board.
Oh yeah, I should have done that.
Spain.
That would have been good. You would have enjoyed that.
The monster of all. I haven't been talking to you since the monster of all cheese boards.
Oh yeah.
For the Heineken Cup final. I think I must have jinxed things.
Yeah,
I should have waited till it was done.
Looked great. When's the next one?
Absolute cracker. I think the URC semis aren't doing it for me.
I get that, yeah.
I might sort of get over the disappointment of the Heineken Cup final and have one for the URC final if they get that far.
Of course.
Wow.
You'll never overstep the mark again with Leinster expectations.
With assuming anything. Righto, 9:15, and thanks for all those comments, by the way, even the ones that I don't fully understand. Please do keep them coming into us with you for the next 45 minutes thereabouts. Time to go back to an item, a couple of lads we spoke to 3 months ago that were preparing at that point far into the distance to row with the Atlantic Ocean from New York City to Galway. I'm delighted to say they're back in the line, Damien Browne and Fergus Farrell. Morning, lads.
Morning, Adrian.
Morning, or what time? In the middle of the night?
Kind of.
That's 4:15 in the morning, yes.
And I say spoke to both of you last time. Not exactly true, of course, and I'm delighted to see that I think you're both in at least some sort of a setup, Fergus, where you ain't going to get kicked out anytime soon.
No, fingers crossed.
Good man. So you're in New York?
Yeah, we are.
What's the... What I saw somewhere you could be setting sail as early as today.
No, not quite today. Now, Saturday, around the 3 or 4 o'clock mark, we're hoping to row out of Manhattan.
Is that's based on weather conditions and everything else?
Yeah, that's correct. And tides, and just giving us the right weather window to give us the best opportunity to row out and get as much distance between ourselves and landmass, you know.
Are you waiting for ideal conditions, or are you waiting for just enough to get you out there?
Ideal conditions would be great, but no, probably just enough to get us out there and get us safely away from landmass as much as possible, because that's probably the most difficult part of this journey is getting away from New York, the harbour, and getting away from the coastline.
I mean, this might be the daftest question of all time, but what are the dangers of that?
Well, when you're close to the coastline, you've obviously tidal influences, onshore winds, which play a massive factor because the boat has a lot of windage, which means that it can be manipulated by strong winds. So and closer we are to the coastline, the boat can be obviously there's more things out in the sea. Also, it's a very busy shipping lane getting out of New York City, as you could imagine. So there's boats coming from every angle because you've got the commuter boats, you've got cargo boats, you've got sightseeing boats, you've just private ships and private yachts, and it's just there's jet skis out there. It's a minefield when you're rowing out of here, actually. So it's just all those elements, and as I said, the further out you get, the wind is still a huge factor, but the thing is, you can be blowing 30, 40 miles one way and blowing 30, 40 miles the other way, but there's actually nothing to hit. But if that happens closer into the coastline, yeah, you can get into serious trouble. And we only have manpower, so if we hit strong winds, we're in serious trouble.
And Damien, what's the plan for navigating around that stuff that Damien's talking about? Like, I mean, if there's a cargo liner coming at you, you've obviously got your radars and everything else going on. What's your how do you actually navigate that stuff?
Simply enough, one of us will row and one of us will keep our eyes up and try and mitigate any sort of collision, I suppose, by moving early or showing intent around that, because as slow and as kind of awkward as we are in the water, they're a lot more awkward and a lot more difficult to maneuver in a tight shipping channel like that. So it'll be up to us to kind of get out of their way. I mean, in a really poor case or an emergency case, we'll just be getting on the radio and letting them know, like, because they mightn't see us, if we're close enough to them for whatever reason, just letting them know we're there, and for them to show some sort of directional movement to kind of miss us. But you really, really need to be kind of foreseeing that early, so you can make manoeuvres to get out of their way.
Is that just an issue for the first day or so, Damien, and then once you're out into the open water, it's all good, and you won't necessarily need to rely on that element of the preparation too much?
Yeah, because once we get out of kind of that busy New York Harbour, those shipping lanes, we won't have both of us on deck at once. It'll be just basically one guy rowing and the other in the cabin, mostly probably sleeping most of the time at least. So then it'll be a thing called an AIS that we have. So it's an automatic identification system. So it's like a radar basically, and it shows us up on other ships and vessels AIS, and of course it shows them up to us simply by beeping. So if you hear that, your kind of heart jumps a little bit, because that there's a big ship, probably a big ship within 2 kilometers of you. And if it's dark, first things first is you have a bit of worry, I suppose, on their direction. But you can check that straight away on the GPS to see if there's any sort of collision, because they could be within 2 kilometers, but kind of going on a completely different bearing when they won't come anywhere near you. So you just got to confirm that first. And if there is some sort of close encounter going to happen, and again, you just get on the VHF radio, which is the intership radio, and just let them know you're there and let them know your course, and again, they will avoid you.
How long does it take you to get through that?
Like an encounter like that?
No, I mean that concern. I might be overstating there, but that sort of been on your toes a bit for the first little bit. Is that how long does it take to get through that before you get out? Like Fergus was talking about the open water, and you're away from all that, the tidal influences and the traffic.
I reckon, there's big shipping lanes, or a lot of shipping traffic kind of up the coast of North America. So once we're about 200 miles out, we'd be well clear of that, and then you just have to worry about the shipping lanes going across the Atlantic.
I thought you were going to say about 2 miles.
No. So yeah, like, well, obviously the further we get out, the less stress there will be around that. But yeah, that's the sort of distance where the traffic would be like dramatically reduced, and then it's kind of more the cargo ships that are going transatlantic that, like, there's a possibility that we could encounter, but less so.
In a way, is the quietness and the solitude and the moments where you're not having to react to dangers like that actually the biggest challenge of this whole thing? Like, I know you'll have each other, but as you said there, Damien, there's going to be significant moments where you'll just be on your own. The other person will be trying to rest up, trying to get some sleep. That it is that solitude in the middle of the ocean that could actually be the biggest mental challenge over the next little while.
Yeah, and just the relentlessness of the ocean, like it never lets you rest, particularly as much as, you know, we might envisage this kind of tranquil experience at times. You have to imagine that the wind is always blowing and howling, and the waves are always roaring, and you know, it's unusual to have a very calm night where, like, the sky is like full of trillions of stars, and you can kind of just sit back and relax and just enjoy it, because you're more than likely uncomfortable in some way if it's not your arse from sitting down for the last 50 days, whatever, 10 days, 20 days. Your hands are probably in bits just from holding the oars for 12 hours a day. And you're probably wet, or at some, you know, on some level, or have some level of wetness. So you're probably uncomfortable. You may have pressure sores. You may have kind of sea sores. So, you know, and then the ocean is tipping the boat here, there, and everywhere. So you're just about barely staying on the seat, you know. So, you know, it's just this relentless battle of discomfort that you have to try and kind of get through for whatever it may be, 2 months, 3 months.
Will there be, Fergus, do you think, like, you guys know each other years, and we were chatting a bit about that the last time. How long have you been in New York, actually?
Personally, I've been here since the 23rd of May, so it's a good stretch to be in here, and it's been a good time in New York. But I have to say, I'm really looking forward to getting out on the boat and getting away from all the chaos that's around here. It's a busy city, and it's plenty of noise going on. But we've needed we've needed all the time we've had here. You know, we're still have a lot to do before we actually manage to row out. So yeah, really looking forward to pushing away.
What have you got left to do?
Oh God. We still have some medical supplies to get. We still have some chivalry, chandlery stuff to get. We have, what else is there, Demo?
Just got to set up a few of the systems in terms of, like, just the tracking system needs to go live, and satellite phone needs to be SIM just needs to be put in and activated, and same with the broadband satellite uplink that we have. So a few little things like that, and then just kind of a few comfort things on the boat, you know, to make life a little bit more comfortable than it could possibly be.
Do you start, either of you, and maybe particularly for you, Damien, at this point, are you starting to get yourself into game mode? Are the butterflies kicking in? Like, what's your usual experience now of narrowing the eyes and getting set for departure?
Yeah, I had a kind of window of that yesterday when we got close to confirmation. It's not fully confirmed, but we're probably leaving on Saturday afternoon, as Gussie said. So I kind of had that first thing. It was like the reality of, okay, here we go now. Like, it's, as you said, it's game day, like, you know, and this is happening. Up until that, I was kind of just present. I wasn't thinking too much about what's coming, you know, but that definitely focused the attention on, okay, now, well, let's kind of start to visualize what it's going to look like navigating New York Harbor and getting out underneath the Verrazano Bridge, and all the possible stressors that could come there. So yeah, since yesterday, it's kind of definitely kicked into that mode of, right, this is happening, and it's the time is finite, and, you know, we got to start to prepare mentally.
And Fergus, you're like 3 weeks in New York, and obviously, like Damien was saying there, the stressors are getting out there, and I presume the stressors are getting everything together and get ready as well. You know each other for years, but I'm sure that's going to, and there will be points of tension, I'm sure, between the two of you in the relationship as you move forward. Are you anticipating that? Are you talking about that, or is it just going to be all grand once you get out there?
We push on it a small bit, but again, like that, it's kind of, as Damien said, we've been kind of dealing with the present at the moment and not really getting much time to even think about what's going to be happening out in the water. And I suppose, look at our relationship is fairly strong over the years, and we've had plenty of moments where we've been pretty thick with each other, angry with each other, and you know what, it never seems to last too long. And you know, obviously being out in that ocean is a different scenario altogether, but I think we would be able to deal with it head on when it happens, and just to be honest with each other, and if there's something bothering us, just let it out rather than letting it boil up and letting this like become a bigger thing than it should be. So you know, we haven't really talked too much about it because we really haven't had the time or the headspace to do that in the last few weeks. But it's definitely something that is one of the big things out in the ocean when you're doing a row as a pair. It's one relationship for whatever amount of days it is. So we really have to work on it. Really have to work hard on it. But look, it's going to be rows. It's going to be moments, and you're going to be fatigued. You're going to be tired. You're going to be angry with yourself. You're going to be angry at the ocean. And I suppose the best thing to do is, let it out and don't hold it in. And I think we'll cope quite well with that. At the end of the day, we started off in this journey as great friends, and we want to end up at the end of the journey as great friends as well.
Yeah, well, look, at people are behind you, and we wish you every success, and we're really looking forward to seeing how you get on. Damien, remind us just how people can keep on top of what you guys are doing, whether it be the podcast or anywhere else.
Yeah, we have a few different ways that we're going to share this journey. So through our social medias, which is Project Empower 2022, or personal social medias, we'll be kind of sharing out like daily pictures and hopefully kind of like mini blogs if you want. And then have a daily dispatch from the ocean through my podcast, which is called Deep Roots. So people can kind of get a real kind of insight into the challenge and the demands of an ocean row, which are extreme to say the least. So just that'll be, like I said, a daily dispatch of whatever 10-15 minutes from the ocean. So that'll be a cool way for people to follow, and that's it really, social media and the podcast.
Yeah, we'll look at we'll tweet those out as well so people can keep on top of it. The captain's run is done, lads. You've been really good to get up in the middle of the night to come and chat to us. We were really eager to catch up with you before you set off. Best of luck with everything. We will really be hope that we're chatting to you in whatever 55 days and 12 hours time after you set sail, and you've got that 126-year record in the bag. So well done and best of luck.
Cheers, lads. Thanks
so much.
Thanks a lot. That's Fergus, Farrell and Damien Browne on the line there from New York as they get ready to set sail tomorrow. That's probably not the correct exact terminology. Set off.
Go.
To go.
They get ready to go tomorrow.
I wasn't expecting them to say 200 miles, I have to say, when they were talking about the shipping channels and the tides and all that.
Yeah, well, you learn something new every day about New York geography, Adrian. It's going to be a hell of a challenge, and I'm just glad that there was no pub owner or restaurant owner or hostel owner or whatever it was last time who kicked one of the lads out of their current location.
How was your first day back?
Good. How was yours?
Yeah, it was good. It was great to have you back.
First day back in the hot seat in a week. I'd say we'll have to wait another week before we see you on the show, will we?
Huh?
We'll have to wait another week before we see you on the show.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah, that's correct, Ron. That is accurate. Listen, it was great to have you back.
No, it was great, and thanks a million to yourself and Colin for inviting me in for the buddy chat at the top. This is something like we actually didn't touch on the show before, but anybody at home probably doesn't realise this, but Adrian and Colin are fond of a few Friday evening pints every so often, a few Friday socials, and some people just don't get the invite. But it was good to be invited into your conversation at the top of the show this morning. I look forward to joining the Adrian and Colin show next Friday.
And then sometimes you get invited and you pie people off on. That's sometimes also what happens.
Yeah, that's yeah, we don't want to start a fight here now, do we? So I just wanted to make people at home aware of what the real dynamics are here.
Colm is insisting that I ask you out. No, I can't do that just at the minute because I have prior plans. But I mean, I am, as you're well aware, Owen, we have a long-standing drinks appointment that we need to get to at some point soon, so we'll do that.
Okay.
Great to have you back. Was really how I started that conversation.
Yeah,
and how we
good to be here.
OTB AM at 25 to 10 on this Friday morning. Great, thanks for coming in. Brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back on Monday morning, 7:30. Owen and Nathan, the lads are going to be joined by Anthony Moyles in studio. Reaction to the football qualifiers, big games over the weekend. Gavin Cooney is going to react to that Ireland's win over Scotland tomorrow, and we'll have the rugby followed as well with Alan Quinlan and plenty more as well. Besides, right now, I'm going to leave you with the Ireland International Claire Shine. She was with Nathan on the show last night to discuss her new book, Scoring Goals in the Dark, and her life in sport. It's a great chat. Enjoy it. Have a great weekend.
Claire is in studio with me this afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I should point out that you're only 27 years old. There's a lot of living in this book, and there's also maybe a lot of living that was missed out on during your journey.
Yeah, of course. I tried to kind of cap everything that had happened over the last number of years in the one book, which was, there was a lot of stories that I didn't put into the book as well. I just wanted to try and paint a picture on what it was like, living with a poor mental health and living life through my addiction, and where it can take you. And, it's easier for me to kind of speak about it now when I'm in a good place, but I think, the book captures what it's like to have a suicidal state of mind, and living life through addiction and poor mental health as well. So,
and it really does capture that. It's not an easy read. You leave it all out there in terms of your struggle with alcohol, with drugs, and you're remarkably honest throughout the entire book on how desperate a situation you found yourself in over the last few years. When I read a book like this, I often wonder, your family, your close friends, how shocked will they be with what they've read, or would they have been well aware of what you've been through?
They lived in the moments as much as I did. It wasn't just me that was affected by all these things. It affected everybody that was around me as well. And as a parent, you don't want to see your child go through such dark times and such dark moments, as well as my friends. And when I look back now, I kind of have that guilt of what I have put them through, because not only was it me that was struggling, it also brought them to a few dark places as well with their mental health, and they're kind of the things that you don't see when you're living in the moment. It's only when you look back and realise, how much of an impact it had on everybody around me. Especially in the last few years, it became very visible to everybody that was around me. Not even the people closest to me, but parents of other players that were on the teams that I was involved in, and fans and supporters. It had an impact on a lot of people. And I actually bumped into someone from the FAI yesterday. I was at the Aviva Stadium for the Ukraine game, and they had mentioned it to me, and how they found when I went missing, and that they were on the edge of their feet, that are on the edge of their seat. And even hearing that now, you don't even realise, for me, I don't realise how much of a broader scale it had affected until I hear or have these conversations with people. So yeah, it affects everybody, and I'm in a situation now where I can kind of look back, and people, and my family in particular, can be really proud of how far I have come, and for me to be proud of where I have got myself and how I managed to get myself out of those dark times. Receiving messages from my mum and my dad saying how proud they were of me, even from the show last night, and even today, having all these kind of media bits that I have been asked to do. So for them to kind of see that, and to see how much I'm working on myself to be a better person, is something that I can be proud of.
Did you sit down with your mum and dad before you started writing the book with Gareth Marr and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to pretty much put it all out there, warts and all, and how were they with that?
They were quite scared, wouldn't be the word. They obviously know that my experiences and my story could help a lot of people, and I think that's just the view that we've all had on it. I think, you know, my experiences, a lot of people could relate to them, as not just in the footballing world but in life in general. I think for them to be able to view it like that is really important, and I think, you know, they've taken it really well. And
their first concern, I'm sure, is to protect you, whereas you're looking at this as a way of really helping other people and to be the inspiration, and people who are struggling with mental health to see that there is a way through this. But they're looking at their daughter, and I guess they're very worried about you talking about this and having to come on shows like this and be very public with the problems you've gone through and how that might affect you.
Yeah, of course. You know, I came out publicly, you know, in 2020 with the letter to my younger self, which had a massive positive response to it. I just feel like at that time maybe I wasn't, you know, I didn't really deal with the overwhelming feeling that brought towards me, and, you know, a couple of months later I actually ended up relapsing. So, you know, there is that kind of they probably had that thought in the back of their mind as well, but I think, you know, they see how strong I am now in my life and what recovery has actually done to me. It's completely changed me as a person, and my outlook on life has completely changed. I have the right tools and an unbelievable support network now. I have people to turn to, you know, when things aren't going so well. So for them to be able to see that, and for me to be so open and honest, can only, you know, help other people, and that's the main aim.
So your background then, I touched on, you know, representing Ireland at a very young age. I think you were 13 when you were called in to an Ireland squad for the first time. You're playing at under-17 World Cups. You're enjoying a lot of big moments. What age were you when you called into the senior squad for the first time?
19.
Right. When did the drinking start?
Heavily, or just in general?
Just in general.
I think I took my first drink when I was 15.
Right. Which wouldn't be unusual for kids in Ireland, let's be honest.
I know. Yeah.
So when did it change from just being a usual thing that kids in Ireland might do to, as you say, being a heavy drinker?
I think it's probably kicked off when I was 19, 20. Right. And I was still, you know, I was playing professional football. I was in and around the international squad.
You were a brilliant camogie player as well.
Yeah, I played in the All-Ireland final in Croke Park when I was 17. So there was a lot going on in my life at that time. I didn't have much time to kind of sit back and take it all in, because there was always something more. You know, as athletes as well, you can never really appreciate what you have achieved in that moment, because there's always the next game, there's always the next competition. So yeah, I just think there was so much going on in my life as well at that time, that when I had an opportunity to let my hair down, I was never one to be able to have one or two drinks. That was never something I was capable of. I was always the first person at the bar and the last one to leave. No matter if the bar was closed or not, I would find, you know, a party to go to. And there was a number of nights, you know, that I didn't come home. And I was kind of out for a number of days. And, you know, I think when I moved to Glasgow the first time, it gave me that freedom. You know, I was in a flat, you know.
What age were you?
19.
Right, so that was when it really kicked off.
Yeah, so I was in a flat, you know, it was the first time I had lived out of home. I had too much freedom. I think I wasn't mature enough to look after myself. I just took full advantage over the fact that my parents weren't around, even though I was playing professional football. That didn't really trigger anything. You know, all I wanted to do was go out and meet new people, and it just kind of overpowered and took over my life, really, at that
So when you've
point.
been reflecting, there was no one moment that suddenly sparked a change in your personality. It just sort of grew and grew, and you're quite clear early on in the book that, like, there was a lot of stress around being a dual star. Like, you excelled at many sports, and trying to balance the camogie and the football, you were being pulled and dragged in a lot of places. That seemed to be, at that young age, a big strain on you.
Yeah, no, it was. You know, all I wanted to do was play. I think it got to a certain stage where I was playing at the highest level in 3 different sports. And, you know, I was being pulled and dragged left, right and centre. Because I didn't have the capability of saying no. I didn't want to miss out on anything. I wanted to play as much as I could.
You're that good. There's probably a sense that you're letting people down if you don't turn up for the big days.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it started to overlap each other, and I had big decisions to make. But, I was still young. I was still I hadn't even turned 18 yet. So it was my mum that had to kind of deal with what game I was playing, where I was going, what I was doing. And, that was a lot of pressure on her as well, and a lot of stress on her to try and make those decisions, because all she wanted was the best for me. And yeah, just, I speak about it in the book, about that weekend where I had the All-Ireland final and I had an under-19 international camp on the same weekend. So I think, after that, I had to kind of make my decision to stick with one sport. I wasn't capable of continuing the both.
Yeah, we hear about these scenarios every year, particularly with women's sport, where there seems to be far more dual players, the pressure that's put on. But you're playing in an All-Ireland final, and it's a struggle to get released from a training camp.
I know, it's absolutely wild. When I look back at it now, it's crazy, because when I was younger, all I dreamed about was playing for Cork Mogie in an All-Ireland final, and then all I dreamed about was representing my country and in all these European competitions. And then when they both fall on the same weekend, I probably, I had an idea in my head that football was going to be something that I wanted to pursue. I feel like there's a lot more opportunity in football, but at the same time, I grew up in a massive sporting community, which was mainly GAA. My neighbours, we were all involved in the same club, and putting on the red jersey and representing my country. It was such a small but powerful community, and it was something that I wanted to achieve. I know obviously we came up short in that All-Ireland final, but it was still an unbelievable experience to run out onto Croke Park and to hear the fans, and it was an incredible moment. And having to say goodbye to that sport after that game, it was difficult, of course. I love hurling. I love camogie. I love the sport. I think it's the most skillful sport that is out there. And I was pretty good at that as well. So
was the loss of that safety net and moving to the more professional environment in Glasgow, where you're obviously still there, but in football you are seen as a bit more of a commodity, whereas, as you said, there's the community aspect of being in Cork, around family, around friends, where maybe they're just keeping a bit more of an eye on you. Whereas you say you go to Glasgow and you're sort of left to your own devices at 19, 20. It probably got to the extreme levels, it's got to be said. But, most people are going to, and we've seen it countless times, where people struggle in that scenario.
Yeah, no, when you put it like that, and when I look back on it, there are definitely things that I could have done better. Decision making, I feel like when I was back there, I wasn't mature enough to make the right decisions, and my behaviours were just not acceptable for a professional athlete. Even for, even the culture that's around, GAA, I feel like there's a lot of drinking culture. Well, there was back then. I know it's kind of different now, and there was a culture of drinking around, all sports, I feel. And because I was doing so well on the pitch, I was getting away with everything that I was doing off the pitch at the same time, and it just came to a head. And I was on my own over in Glasgow as well, and nobody over there really knew how bad things were actually getting for me.
You were
because
at one
I kept
stage you were living with Denise O'Sullivan.
Yes, I was.
I think at that stage maybe there was a bit of looking after going on, that sort of Denise took you under her wing, but once Denise left, there was a sort of gaping hole in your life. Yeah, no, there was. Denise was unbelievable, and her motivation and her work rate and everything that she has achieved up to this point is unbelievable, and it just shows where football, when you work hard at something, that's exactly where it can take you. I went the complete opposite way, and I don't really know why or how that actually came about.
I went down the wrong route, I suppose. I was struggling with my mental health, and I always have struggled with my mental health. It was something that I always wanted to hide, and I feel like I got that comfort from drinking, from the social aspect of things. And I never really looked after myself, and it took me down a very dark path. And when I came back then after my first spell at Glasgow City, it just erupted, I suppose.
You weren't hiding away at home every day drinking either. Your drinking was a very public thing. You were out and about in Cork, you were out and about in Glasgow. You were, from reading the book, a bit of a messy drunk, that when you were out, everybody knew you were out. A lot of people must have been aware that your drinking wasn't like a normal 20-year-old's drinking. It was way beyond that. Or were you in some way managing to hide the true extent of it from people?
I think I did manage to hide a lot of it. It gets to about 12 o'clock and I would find a party somewhere else. I would kind of take myself out of the pub aspect of things. And I think that's how, I kind of got away with it. But, coming into the last few years of my drinking, the last 2 years in particular, it was very, very obvious to a lot of people with where it was taking me.
And did many people try and intervene?
No, Amanda Budden intervened.
Right.
And she told the management at Cork City. I turned up to a game from the night before, and
and why do you think more people didn't intervene if so many people had an idea that there was more going on than just having a few drinks?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. Because looking back now, I was an absolute mess. And it was very physical. It wasn't just a mental thing with me then at that time. I think I had overdone it to a point where I lost my hygiene. Like I found it hard to even have a shower or brush my hair.
Right.
My eating habits were all over the place. I was smoking weed, and then the drugs started to come into play. And you don't realise at the time the long-term impacts that has on you. And it became really physical. I was bleeding, I was coughing up blood. I was bleeding every time I was going to the toilet. And I remember certain moments where I actually went to the doctor, and I went to South Dock, but there was a long wait time, and I knew my friends were in the pub, and I just got up and left because I didn't have the patience to wait to speak to a doctor.
Yeah.
I kind of knew that it was my lifestyle that was bringing on all these issues that I was having with my physical health, and hearing that and being confronted by that, I didn't want to hear it. I just would have rather have ran away from it. And when I did end up turning up to a few games under the influence, that was really when people stepped in and tried to support me and help me in the best way that they could. But ultimately, there's not a lot that people can do for you when you're in that state of mind. It's up to you to bite into this support and to trust the process, I suppose. And that was something that I found hard, because when I was so young, trying to give up drink meant that I had to distance myself from friends, pull myself out of the social aspect, and I didn't want that. I felt like I was associated with drink as much as I was associated with playing football. It was as if I just took on that role of being that party girl as well as that athlete, and I didn't want to lose that, because that's where I felt like I was able to communicate with friends, and without that, who was I? What was my identity? What could I bring to this world if I didn't have that? And that was something that I found hard to accept. It wasn't until I actually tried to commit suicide until I really realised I needed to go through a lifestyle change and to bite into the process of becoming sober and start my road to recovery. And in that process and the process in recovery, you learn so much about yourself. And even when I gave up drink for the first time, you know, I didn't believe that I was an alcoholic. I didn't believe that I was an addict.
So when you gave up for the first time, did you give up just, I'm taking a break from this? Or at that stage, had you entered a recovery program where you were having to have conversations around alcoholism?
Yeah, of course. And I had those difficult conversations as well when I went into the drug and alcohol centre. But there was still that voice in my head saying, you know, the next time will be different. And that was just the addict talking to me. You know, I completely separate the addict and me because they're completely two different people. You know, I'm not a monster. I'm just living with something that's so powerful that's the way it projects you. And I think that took me a long time to realise and to accept. It wasn't until I relapsed in 2020 that I really fully believed that I was an addict and that I was an alcoholic at the age of 23. And then when I had my relapse, you know, I was 24, and that was when I really, really started to trust the process and go through all the stages of recovery. You know, a lot had changed in my life after my relapse. You know, I had lost a lot of weight. I had a hard relationship with food. You know, I had medication, trying to get back into the swing of things, and taking on the responsibility of what happened as well.
There's a hell of a lot going on there for somebody in their early 20s to have to deal with. How difficult is that moment at 23 when you're having to sit in a room and say, I'm an alcoholic?
Very difficult, you know, when those words kind of come out of someone's mouth. You know, I kind of just brushed it under the carpet.
Did you believe it when you said it the first time?
No, I would never. You know, I was playing in the Champions League the year before. I would have never associated myself as being an alcoholic. You know, you wouldn't put a professional athlete who's playing international football, playing in the Champions League, in a category with drugs and alcohol. It's just something that's not spoke about, but I know it affects a lot of people. And then when I had my relapse then in 2020, it was like, this is actually who I am. And if I, you know, it's a sink or swim situation that I found myself in. And you know, I wanted to take responsibility for my actions, and I wanted to change, and I wanted to prove, you know, not only for myself but to other people, that I could do it and that I could do it again. You know, when I relapsed, I said I can't be seen ever again. I'm never going to be able to get my life back on track, let alone get back playing professional football. It was completely out of my reach, and all I wanted to do was try and get my life back on track and to find true happiness and to be, you know, in control of who I am and to try and find out who I really am. And I think, you know, the recovery over the last 2 years, you know, I'm nearly 2 years sober next month or next week, and I can, you know, finally say that I finally have found who I really am, and it's something that I can be really proud of, and my family are really proud of. You know, it's just crazy the way life brings you, I suppose. Without all my struggles, without football, you know, I wouldn't have been able to write my book. I wouldn't be able to inspire people to speak out about their mental health, their addiction issues. You know, football has given me some unbelievable memories. It's given me cup finals, league titles. I've travelled the world. I've met some unbelievable people, but it's also given me my life back, and I'm forever grateful to still be in this position. And I think, you know, I still have a lot to give of football, and, you know, I have a lot to look forward to over the next number of years.
You certainly do. I think one of the things that makes this book so powerful is how relevant it all is and how recent it all is. You're not writing this when you're 50 and looking back in hindsight. Like, all of this has happened over the last couple of years, and I'm wondering, did that make it more difficult when you touch on going to the Aviva Stadium and meeting an FAI official? Like, there's an awful lot of people who read this and remember those nights out. Like, you don't hold anything back. Like, there's no glamorous side to this. You know, it's very clear of going into a pub and falling over and knocking over a table of drinks in front of all your friends at 3 in the morning, and them all sort of raising their eyes, having gone, here she goes again, and sort of having to put up with it. But also, even from a footballing point of view, like, there's a couple of remarkable nights out of, you had already made your Ireland debut, but you weren't in the squad, and I think you went over to Amsterdam to a famous result against the Netherlands and the return game, and basically you go out drinking before the game, but because you're a former part of the squad, you're in the seats with the FAI officials and all the family and friends, and you're completely out of it, to the extent that you're walking onto the pitch at the end of the game and hugging Katie McCabe with a lot of drink on you.
It gives me goosebumps. You know, I still get the fear sometimes about all my actions, I suppose. You know, but there's nothing I can do about that. All I can do is learn and to bring it forward with me and to make sure it never happens again.
Like, that would have been something that would have been easy to leave out of a book. You obviously just wanted to make sure that it was all there.
I wanted to make it as real and as honest and as open as I possibly can. I think, you know, I've held on to this part of me for so long, and I finally found a place where I've been able to be open and to be honest, and, you know, it's a weight off my shoulders as well. I have nothing to hide. You know, I find myself in coming out of my comfort zone quite a lot over the last few days. You know, sitting here and talking about my experiences is something that I would have never done previously, because I've always had that hold and that part of me that I didn't want to show. Whereas now, you know, I know that my experiences can help so many people, and well, I hope it can help so many people. And that's, you know, something that I can learn from as well. You know, I'm not going to perfect everything in my life. There's going to be things that happen that are out of my control. It's just how you manage and how you deal with them going forward is something that I've realised.
Katie McCabe writes the foreword in the book, and you're of a similar generation, and you mentioned playing with Denise O'Sullivan, and you see the buzz that's around the women's game at the moment. When you look at where you were and where they were at 18, 19, how does it sit with you at the moment, not being a part of that?
You know what? I applaud anybody who is at the top of their game. I applaud anybody who plays international football, professional sport at that, because the demands, the pressures, the expectations, you know, the lack of game time sometimes, then there comes the injuries. All these things have an impact on someone's mental health, and how they control it is beyond words. And constantly being in the limelight and trying to perform to the best of their ability, there's a lot that goes on in professional sport that people don't see. And I, you know, applaud anybody who's capable of doing it, and what the girls have done over the last number of years has been unbelievable, and I'm their number one supporters, and they know that. I'm always there. I'm always, you know, watching the games, and I'm always, you know, sending messages of wishing them good luck, and, you know, it's just unbelievable where the game has actually gone. And, you know, so, you know, when I was going through all these difficult times, I would have loved to have been there with them, but, you know, I think life works in mysterious ways, and for me, I just went down a different path. You know, everyone's journey is completely different, and, you know, I still have a lot more to give to football. By no means is my journey with football over yet. You know, I just have to take each day as it comes and work as hard as I can on the pitch and off the pitch, and to become the best person as I can, or to become the best version of myself, I suppose. So yeah, you know, what Katie has done with her career is just unbelievable. She's a remarkable woman, and, you know, I'm very good friends with Katie as well as Denise and the rest of the girls, and they've just taken the sport and football in Ireland to a completely new level, and all I can do, you know, is applaud them for what they have done.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.